Call the meeting to order of the Ojai City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Johnston.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina. Here. Councilmember Blatz.
Here.
Councilmember Haney.
Here.
Councilmember Wyrick.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. All join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Bill, will you lead us?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item is to approve the agenda. Are there any changes in the order that anyone?
Mayor Johnson, I was wondering, if there would be some appetite for considering having item 8 be the first item of the, in terms of the discussion items. The first discussion item is number 4. I was wondering if we could substitute number 8 from that, since it's sort of an overview issue of land use processes.
And to take it up when? To
Have,
move it to which?
have number 8 be the first discussion item. I was wondering what the rest of the council thought about that.
That makes
Okay,
sense.
that would make it number, well,
Number
precede number 2?
Precede number 4,
Oh,
actually.
number 4, okay.
Yeah, because there's, I believe we're going to be the recommendation of continuing 3, and the first discussion item is number 4. I was thinking of if the council members thought we could have 8 be right after.
Okay,
the
is there
first
any
discussion.
objection to reordering the agenda to take item number 8 before the 4, 5, and 6? Is there any, are there any other changes?
No, so we're gonna go we're gonna go 2, 3, 8, 4.
Right. Okay,
Oh, this is going to be continued.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
we all together on that now?
2, 3, 8, 4.
Okay, are there any other changes?
No.
If not, if there's no objection, so ordered.
Yeah, and, well, Mayor, I will be pulling one consent item when we get to that.
Okay. So we have under presentations, we are honored by Andy Cantwell. Andy, come on up, our superintendent of schools. Thank you for
Thank you,
coming to
Mayor.
talk.
Thank you, Mayor and council members, for allowing us to be here this evening, and thank you for putting us right at the beginning of the agenda. We appreciate that. I do have a special guest with me who I'll be introducing here in a moment, but first, I just want to share a picture of my son.
A picture of you.
It's a
So,
retrospective here.
Is that
The
what you
checkerboard
looked like
is
when
what
you were
gets
first
me.
hired?
my son is currently a student at Miramani Elementary School, so he's in transitional kindergarten, and any opportunity I have to show him off, I enjoy it. So tonight, I'm going to be
When
giving
I was
you-
that age, I had a crew cut. It's very embarrassing.
I had no hair.
I'm going to attempt a pretty ambitious agenda for our State of the District address to you, but I was so excited to be here. I wanted to try to hit on kind of a 30,000 level view of a number of topics. If I were to zoom in on them, we'd be here for a half hour or more, so I'll try to be quick, but obviously if you guys have questions and desire of that zoomed in view, please let me know. So again, very ambitious agenda for tonight. The first thing I want to do is just briefly talk about the leadership transition. Before we talk about my guest and my own transition, I just want to take the opportunity to remind each of you, our district really has gone through a lot of change leadership-wise over the past 5 years. So as I'm sure you recall, we had 3 new school board members come on in 2014. 1 additional new board member come on in 2016, and so 4 of our 5 board members have been on the board for 4 years or so or less. Principals, every principal in our district is new to their role or new to their site in that time as well, with the exception of Catherine White at Miramani. And when you look at our director level leadership at the district office and our assistant superintendent, every one of those leaders are new to their seat in the past 3 years. So really, what we're looking at is, again, a very significant change that Ojai has experienced just in the past 3 to 5 years. I've been honored. I joined the district in May of 2015 as the assistant superintendent. I've worked with each of you on a number of items. I've loved my time here in Ojai, but as I imagine you've perhaps heard, and we will be transitioning out of Ojai 2 months from now, moving to Texas. It'll be very tough for us to leave Ojai. We, as I said, love this community and have loved the school district. but it's the right opportunity for our family. And if I knew that our district could get someone like Dr. Tiffany Morris, I would have been encouraging them to fire me a number of years back. Dr. Morris is an improvement in every way. Please stand up, Dr. Morris. So Tiffany comes to us from the Ventura County Office of Education. That's the county body that works with all 20 school districts in the area. She is responsible for bringing more than $20 million of new funding to programs across the county in career technical education. So she can talk much more eloquently to it than me, but everything from auto shop and welding, some of the historical kind of industrial art type classes, as well as very much 21st century robotics and every exciting career path that one could imagine. She in some way has brought to schools within our county. So very exciting. Built relationships throughout the county in the business sector as well to help create those partnerships. When the board appointed her 2 weeks ago, I got a number of calls from my colleagues across the county. Very happy for her, but also very upset that they no longer would be the beneficiary of the fruits of her labor. So again, she's been an incredible asset to our county and will be for our community. So now we jump into a few slides. The first thing I always want to talk about with our district is the enrollment picture and the impact on our finances. Very small chart. I'm not sure if you guys have a copy. The important thing to see.
We're old, Andy.
Yeah, I didn't quite realize the way that this would appear on the screen, so I apologize. Important thing to see is that, or to hear me say, because I don't imagine you'll see it. Our district, 20 years ago, we had about 4,200 students. This is showing the enrollment each year starting in 2012-13. So in the 12-13 year, we were still over 2,800 students. Each year we've had a decline, and this year we're at 2,385. We're anticipating a further drop over the next 5 years down to about 2,100 students. And the reason that this picture is so small is that we actually break it down by grade level, and you'll see that we're not losing a bunch of students once they come into our district. They actually almost always stay with us. There's very little loss of students, for instance, from 3rd to 4th or from 7th to 8th. What happens is we have 160 student cohorts coming in. That's what we're calling the body of students for a particular grade. 160 students come in as kindergartners, and we graduate 200 kids. That's going to be the loss of 40 kids that we might experience in a single year. So again, really our issue with our enrollment in the district is also a symptom of some of the issues I know you struggle with here monthly when it comes to the demographics of the community and some of the challenges for families to afford to live here. Over the next 5 years, we're anticipating continuing drop about 2% each year, which happens to be about the same of increased funding we're anticipating. So the cost of living adjustments are all we'll be getting going forward from the state. And so that will be eaten up very quickly by losing students, because we get paid for every student in our district. If you lose a student with that child, goes about $10,000. So this slide, I just point out that even though our funding will stay pretty flat for the next 5 years, we have a number of increases, many of which we had no control over, that are going to require our budget to go up by about 15% before we even factor in any new programs or new services. Just by things like increased pension contributions, again, I know something that the city struggles with as well. The impact of on Social Security by the minimum wage increase. So when we have to increase wages, that's a cost. But then also the fact that all of those payroll taxes also go up as a further cost. So when you add all of them together over the next 5 years on an annual basis, we'll be looking at about almost $4 million increase to our budget, despite no new revenues to speak of. So that's the fiscal reality that we're looking at. Despite that, I believe our district, while we're not in the leanest years that we were in, 8 years ago, we're still in a position where we have to be cautious when it comes to our budget. But I am very confident in the leadership that we have in this district and the position that we're currently in. All right, so a few district investments. Again, I'm going to be flying quickly, and if I speak too quickly, let me know. Two things I wanted to hit on as far as our investments. One, we did purchase 3 new buses this summer. Through excellent work of our transportation department, we were able to receive a clean air grant that saved about a third of the cost of these buses. So what would have been a $540,000 purchase, we got the buses for about $350,000. Really significant savings through that grant. And we also entered into a lease with Camp Vermont to rent out our buses during the summer when we otherwise wouldn't be using them, and that's generating $41,000 a year in rental revenue. So through those two creative ways, getting the grant as well as that lease, these buses will pay for themselves within 5 or 6 years. And of course, we're very excited to report that our ridership this year has gone up by about 125 riders from last year. Last year we were about 200. This year we're over 300 riders per day taking advantage of our buses. Very excited. They have air conditioning and seat belts. We think that those two things have certainly helped kids enjoy their rides. Measure J projects. This summer, in 2019, we're going to start about $10 million of construction at our schools. The two biggest projects are our library modernization at Nordhoff. It's nearly $3 million. Bids are due in May 1st, and construction, we will be breaking ground this summer, the first week school lets out. It's going to be a project taking place the entire summer. So we will be without a true library for next school year, but we anticipate its completion next summer. The other big project is at Matilaha. We're going to be providing a new kitchen that allows some really exciting things for us to build out in partnership with Food for Thought of more from-scratch cooking. So it's going to be a central prep, central storage kitchen, very exciting, double the size for indoor seating so our kids can actually be in climate-controlled room, dining hall during those hottest days here in Ojai, or those 6 days that we get rain. Also at Matilaha, you can see a few pictures that we have. Again, an extended patio that provides also some sheltered seating outside, and a much larger, again, it's about double the square footage indoor from what we currently have. Also at Matilaha this summer will be a $1.5 million project, brand new locker room, as well as a new roof on the gymnasium and significant improvements to the gym at Matilaha. So again, between the various projects, throw in about $2 million of roofing, $10 million of school construction this summer. Another initiative within our district I'm excited to share is our Cultural Literacy and Anti-Bias Education Initiative. I appreciate the city's involvement. We had our mayor and city manager at the community forum that we held back in January. That community forum helped us really initiate a dialogue in our district, and I think more broadly throughout our community, on some really important matters of cultural literacy and anti-bias education. Since that time, over the past 4 months, you can see that we've held a number of trainings and programming for our staff and our students. All middle schoolers or all junior hires received a hate symbols assembly that we also gave to parents at 2 different times on the same day. So parents and kids were coming home and engaging the same conversation around that topic, really powerful. We've had site administrators trained in restorative justice, which is a concept that I'll talk about on the next slide. We had a staff development day, so we have 2 days a year during the school year where we have no students present and we just have our staff there for training. We chose to use an entire one of those days to focus on a training by the Anti-Defamation League on hate and bias, tools for responding to hate and bias, and so a really powerful training for all of our staff. We've had this month, 5th and 6th graders have received a really powerful civil rights presentation from a local community member whose parents were Holocaust refugees and who himself actually marched with Dr. King and was very involved in the civil rights movement and is also an amazing musician. So he's able to use music to share the story of civil rights struggles here in America. So restorative justice, that was one of the things I said that we're really focused on expanding and building out for this coming year. Restorative justice is, as the slide says, it's a process used to bring people together to create community, resolve issues, and restore relationships. School sites have begun the implementation, or in the implementation phase right now, so it's a different approach to discipline. Instead of just saying you've done something wrong, we're going to send you to detention or potentially suspend you, you really have the child reflect on the who was harmed, how can I correct that harm, and how do we try to restore community at the school site? And so really exciting that we're bringing in some of those initiatives this year and continuing it for next year. We also are focused on social emotional learning curriculum. As you guys know, our schools are responsible today for far more than arithmetic or teaching kids to read. Social emotional learning is a really important new development that we have in our district. Next year at Matilaha, every single student every day will receive this curriculum for 20 to 25 minutes. It's a curriculum that you can see again, it's helps students learn social skills, how to form healthy relationships, how to make good decisions, and how to cope with social and academic challenges. So it's trying to help, again, the whole child as opposed to focusing exclusively on the academics within the school setting. Obviously, our teachers are amazing, and they've been working on a lot of these things just naturally over the years, but this is a far more systemized way in which we're addressing these challenges. Across our district, we've had a lot of autonomy at the site level when it comes to some of the educational programming around this area. And actually, just last week, our assistant superintendent, Dr. Knox, presented to the board a unified vision for ensuring what all students will receive in our district when it comes to these areas of cultural literacy and anti-bias education. She has a chart for every grade that has some highlights of what we're doing, and I just chose to pull out one, 5th grade. So again, you can see that we have a civil rights movement assembly with the added emphasis on Cesar Chavez. That will be every single 5th grader every year receives that assembly. In addition, we have a number of, again, that social emotional learning curriculum for this grade. They have one that's on a civil rights movement, another that's on racism, and another that's on bias and bullying. And then within the English language arts curriculum, they'll read a book, Esperanza Rising, which is a novel that chronicles Mexican migrant farm workers in the 1930s here in California. All right, I'm just going to keep going. I know I'm talking quick, but I want to be respectful of your time. The next item that we have is the latest update on our district office property. As you guys know, we've been going through a process for the past 2.5 years of walking down a path toward being able to receive proposals on the property. Ultimately, it was just on March 1st that we did receive 3 proposals from potential developers with interest on developing the district office property. For the past month and a half, we've been working with those developers on clarifying terms, making sure we understand the full proposal. As you can imagine, these are very complex proposals. And so right now we're in that process of just clarifying information, getting further specificity on certain terms. You know, some of the proposals include the district participating in revenues of the development, and so really getting a strong understanding of the basis for those estimates. Right now, the plan is that in May, the board is going to be holding a closed session to make a final determination whether they will be rejecting all proposals or bringing some to the community's attention to really engage the community and ultimately, of course, you as well in considering these proposals. As we've said every time we've had these conversations throughout the community, you know, it was always a weird thing for us to call our district office surplus. As you guys know, we have 2 schools, Chaparral and A Place to Grow, housed there. We have our district operations, including transportation, maintenance operations, as well as my office and the, again, operations office. So for us to just move off the site, at minimum, we need $1 million, and we've been pretty transparent with that number. That's the bare minimum threshold, and frankly, we still are working on if that's actually the most accurate number, but we know that's the minimum number to just begin to engage in a conversation around the possibility. Beyond that, we have to have something on an ongoing basis that actually warrants the district decentralizing, which would be the only way we could move off the site. We'd have to house what currently is on one site across multiple sites. And so right now, that's what we're working on again with those developers, is understanding exactly where their financial proposal comes in, as well as other key terms. And if we can identify at least one, if not multiple proposals that meet that threshold, then we'll certainly be, again, engaging the community and ultimately the council on these proposals before any decision would be made. Last thing I have is an update on Summit, and then again, any questions that you may have for anything that I just read through. Summit Elementary School. So as you know, it's our school in Upper Ojai. We had to make the very painful decision back in May to close that school, May of 2018. The board officially took action June 6th. Back in April and May, we had enrollment coming in lower than anticipated, and so we only had 24 students enrolled for the school for this current year. We began engaging the community up there to make sure they knew what the numbers were looking like, and through that process, it went down to 18. So again, extremely challenging decision to make, but it was 18 children across 8 grades, transitional kindergarten through 6th, that we just did not feel that we could provide the educational rigor and programming that those children deserve. So we closed the school for 1 year. We've rented it out to a number of users. This current year, Rock Tree Sky is an educational enrichment program that's one of the primary users of the space. In December, the board approved the convening of a 7-Eleven committee. That's the term that we use for citizen advisory committees, simply because they can be made up of no less than 7 members and no more than 11. I had no idea when I came to Ojai what everyone was calling a 7-Eleven committee. I knew it didn't deal with Slurpees, but it certainly is kind of a weird nickname to give them. So anyway, we convened a 7-Eleven committee. They've begun meeting in March. During that time in between the approval of their convening and their actual convening, the board did decide to close the school for at least 1 more year, so it will be closed for this upcoming school year, 2019-20, while this committee deliberates. At their last meeting on April 10th, they decided to make the recommendation that they are identifying the property as surplus, which again, we know from the conversation around district property, that doesn't actually mean that the district will ultimately sell or lease the property. It's the first hurdle that must be overcome to even consider potential lease or sale of the property. And a lease actually, by the state's definition, is anything that is exclusive use for 30 days or more. So the committee, even though they said it was surplus, their recommendation might be to enter into an exclusive use with a tenant like Rock Tree Sky for only 1 year and then reevaluate a year from now. So that's still, all of those are possibilities still available for the committee to recommend. And as I know, this body understands as well, that a recommending body is not the decision-making authority, that's the board. And so the 7-Eleven will make a recommendation to the board likely next month, and then our school board will take up the topic to decide whether or not to entertain a lease or sale of the Summit property. At this time, we have nothing that we see or envision that's going to result in the school reopening in 2021, although there's a number of community groups that are really focused on trying to explore various options. So yet to be seen. That's my 30,000-foot view of our district, and that's our 500-foot view of the students at Matilaha in their form of an M. All right, is there any questions? Again, I apologize for speaking quickly, but I know you have a full agenda.
Yeah, Bill?
Just a detail,
Yeah.
mechanics. What is the, hopefully I wish you'd invite your new superintendent next to maybe introduce herself if she'd like, and I hope she would, to us, but what's the actual turnover date in terms of
My
her
transition?
first day and your last day?
So her first day on paper is July 1, although I'll say that I know she's holding countless meetings already. So she's very connected to the community, has been very engaged already. But my last date, again on paper, is July 8th. My last date in the office is June 20th. So the transition is I'm closing out this school year,
Okay.
and she'll be beginning this summer. But Tiffany, I'm sure you'd love to come on up.
I wasn't planning on coming up, but yes, I would love to. So thank you very
We're
much
all
for
very
having me
interested,
tonight. As Andy mentioned, I've been up here pretty much every day so far, just meeting with various people, various community members, getting to know our schools, our staff, and my husband and I are looking for a home in the area. So we are in the process of transitioning. So I've been picking up as much as I can from Andy and look forward to working with you in the future.
Would you be open to, just 2 more questions really quickly, would you be open to any meetings with any of us, just in terms of our accumulated
You're on my list.
concerns
You're
and
all on my
interests?
list.
That's a loaded question.
All right.
Yeah, tell him no. You want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
You can ask Andy. I came in with a list of people. And so, yes, I would be open to that. Currently, Andy and I are sharing. Kathy Smith is the administrative assistant to kind of work out what fits in with my schedule at my current job. But I am happy to come and would welcome meeting with you.
And then one last thing, and this is it, I
Right.
promise,
Okay.
is
Randy's in waiting.
I listened very carefully about the decision, and this really question for both of you, and maybe a question for the board. And my personal preference is I would hope that the board would take testimony on the decision about whether to move to an open community dialogue versus moving forward with the proposals. I just think that would be helpful, that rather than just announcing that decision, that maybe take some community input on that decision. Just a thought.
So just to clarify, they certainly would not be making a decision to move forward with a project without engaging the community. That's a non-starter. They would not proceed that path. The decision is that if we don't meet the minimum threshold just to help us move off the campus, then that's what they're deliberating, whether it still warrants a community dialogue or if it would be better just to reject a proposal or multiple proposals. But they certainly
You
wouldn't.
know my point of view, and so be it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Randy, do you have a
So
question?
a couple, first of all, Andy, thank you for all your time here. You've been a wonderful leader, and it's demonstrated through the kids that have graduated through our system. So I just want to say thank you for that. The other thing is, back in the day, we called it the thinking bench. It is where you had to go when you had to digest your
Right.
your doings, your bad doings.
right.
So it was
The
interesting.
naughty chair.
Exactly.
When I was first introduced to it, I went, thinking bench, what am I supposed to be doing here? They're not letting me play. So that was interesting that you brought that up. And again, the idea of cultural diversity in this community is having that dialogue is so important. And actually creating more diversity in this community also. As I look in this room, and as we all look in this room, there's not much diversity here. And I say diversity in the color of skin, maybe that'll help you to see what I'm seeing. But this is a white group here. And it's very difficult, I believe, for young white children to understand diversity when they're not surrounded by it. So what you're doing is going to open their eyes and give them an opportunity to understand it and recognize that it is a very important part of our world.
Yeah. Thank you, Randy.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions that anyone, well, welcome. Goodbye and good luck, Andy. Thanks for all that you've done.
You're ready for humidity, mosquitoes, and you can-
I appreciate you guys coming over. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, we are just about right on schedule for public communications, which is a time set aside for citizens to address the council on topics not on the agenda. And I have so far two cards for that. Council's not allowed to take any action because it's not on the agenda, but we will listen and maybe questions will follow. So, Dale Hanson, one of our regulars, good.
Yes.
Welcome.
I don't have a lot of details about what I'm going to speak on tonight, but I was hoping to get some information. I see Sergeant Fryoff is not here, Captain Fryoff. But at any rate, I understand that there was an incident, and I believe it was last night, where a homeless man who slept in his truck, and I think it was in the Wendy's parking lot, the police came and impounded his truck, took all of his belongings, including the leash for his dog, and the dog got out in the highway and got killed. So not only did they take all of his belongings, everything he had, the closest one in his life was his dog, and he was sitting there crying. And people saw that, and it's all over Facebook, so maybe some of you have seen it. And there's so many people in the community that want to reach out to this man, and we don't know how to reach him. So if there's some way, there are a lot of people want to help him, maybe get his truck out and help him any way we can, because it was really a sad thing.
And this occurred where? At
I think
Wendy's?
it was last night at Wendy's,
Okay.
or near Wendy's. He was sleeping in the parking lot in his truck, which is all he had, and his belongings, everything was in there, including the dog's leash. So it's a sad story, and if there's any way we can get contact with that man, it would be very nice.
So the city manager and the sheriff's office maybe can help out?
I don't have any information on that.
No, not tonight, but if you could follow up on it.
Sure, I'll follow up with Captain Fryoff, make sure that he's aware of the concern.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you, Dale.
Thank you.
could I just request that when you find out, could you pass that on to anyone on the, I'm interested to know, because if they impounded his truck, they surely must know the name of the man. You know, the community is very concerned that this even happened. You know, I would like to, I actually would like to see it investigated. I want to know more details.
Okay, well, it's outside the jurisdiction of the city of Ojai, but the information, I'm sure, will be
Yes.
made available to you.
Yes, thank you.
The next speaker is Renee Roth. Come on up, Renee, with Jeff Kroll on deck.
Hello, Mayor Johnny and members of the council. I'm sure you probably received my letter today. I'm just here to comment publicly because I think something needs to be done. And I don't have all the answers. But last Sunday evening, my friend and neighbor, Edith Rubloff, was killed while crossing the street at Maricopa Highway in a crosswalk. She had been visiting the Ojai Meadow Preserve and was crossing Maricopa Highway directly in front of the Ojai Hospital. For years, my friend Edith walked from her home in the Creekside Complex to the Ojai Meadow Preserve in order to enjoy the beauty of nature and to feed the birds. Edith made this journey daily when she was physically able, despite the challenge of chronic pain, which forced her to use a walker. She loved being in nature and found joy and sustenance there. She was an inspiration to us all in her dedication and joy at being able to walk again. But on Easter Sunday, after the joy of the preserve, Edith was killed on Maricopa Highway. While Edith's death was a shock, it was not really a surprise. There is no safe way for a person to cross 4 lanes of a busy highway. I've spoken about the unsafe conditions on Highway 33 at a recent City Council meeting, and have expressed concern at meetings of the Complete Streets Committee about setting slower speed limits and addressing unsafe crossing conditions at Maricopa Highway at this same crosswalk and others in our downtown area. I personally know of, I originally said 4, and it's up to 5 people who have lost their lives trying to cross the street in Ojai. I'm very disturbed that another person has lost her life. I'm writing today for fear that she is just another fatality. Edith was a real person with hopes, dreams, and desires like us all. She inspired many of us to push on and take the next step. I urge the city to take action and expedite the traffic calming measures on Highway 33 to slow down traffic as soon as possible. I hope the project with Caltrans to install bike lanes can be expedited, not just spending more time and money for a trial. We also need a campaign that promotes pedestrian and bicycle safety at all crosswalks, with tourists and residents of Ojai to slow down our drivers. The council must set aside safety as a priority to protect the health, safety, and welfare of all in our community. And I will be submitting this as a letter to the editor in the paper. There are many people in the Creekside community who have stepped up and can't even cross the street anymore. They cannot go across the street. They've all had incidents of trying to cross the street. So we really need something to be done. I don't know if our representative council member can come have a meeting with Creekside residents. Is that something that's possible? I know Greg Grant has reached out to both her son, and he also responded to my email, and I appreciate that. But it would be nice to have some follow-up about what is being done to address the safety at Maricopa Highway. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you, Renee.
Jeff Kroll.
Good evening. Thank you, staff, council, sheriff department. Ditto about what this lady just said. It really is important. I'm 68. I'd like to be here till I'm 90. I'd like to be able to cross safely on streets in our town, and whatever I can do to help. My name is Jeff Kroll. I am the president of Shangri-La Care Cooperative. I would like to make an announcement. I would like to really thank the city of Ojai for allowing us three dispensaries to have our 420 event this last weekend. It went very well. I do not think that there was any problems at all that I'm aware of. It went nice and clean and safe. One of the things I would like to announce is one of the state mandates with these collectives and cooperatives we were required to start the process to become a for-profit corporation. Many in California have been doing that, and we're about to complete that task. One of my last duties of being the president of Shangri-La as a cooperative was to make sure that the members of our 700 members in 2015 get their property back. This morning, that motion was filed. We will have a court hearing on the 17th in order to see what the judge has to say. There will be some press on this, I'm sure, and I'm making this public announcement because it's been over 3 years, 8 months, something like that, since this has happened. So I just want the public to know that before we make a change to for-profit, we want to complete what the voting members of our group wanted to happen, and that is to request that I get our property back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. That's all the cards we have. Okay, we will move along to the next topic.
Mayor, it's item I that I'd like to pull for a couple questions.
And before we go any further, City Manager, do we have you want to introduce our fire chief? Our new representative from the fire department?
Oh,
Is he here?
is he here?
Yes, I think so. Don't I?
There he is.
Chief
There he
Monday?
is.
Yeah,
All
Chief
right.
Monday, would you like to
Yeah.
come on down?
Come on
It's
up.
like Price is Right, come on down.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor and City Council, how are you?
As good as
So,
we can be.
My name's Gary Monday, and I am your new fire chief for the city of Ojai. I was recently promoted, replacing John McNeil. John still has oversight over me, but I will be your new fire chief. I came from our wildland and fire and aviation division, where I was for the last 5 years until taking this spot. I've been with the Ventura County Fire Department for 29 years. And I reside in Camarillo with my wife and 2 boys. One's a 3rd year at Cal Poly, and the other one goes to Camarillo High School. So I've been a county resident my whole life,
Well,
and really excited to be here to support the city of Ojai.
okay. Well, welcome, and we're delighted that you've been assigned to our
Yeah.
valley.
And I would just like to express, may the next couple of years be less eventful.
I think it will be. I think it will be.
Let
Not
us
a
all
lot left.
pray.
What is your name again, please?
Gary Monday.
Gary Monday,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Nice to meet you.
And thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
You bet.
Right. Right. Okay, we are now on the consent agenda. Bill, did you say you had something you wanted to
I
pull?
had some questions for item I.
So he's pulling that. Do we want to move to approve D, E, F, G, H? Mayor?
Second?
Okay, does that, do we have anything besides I that wants to be pulled? If not, with the exception of I, we have a motion and a second to approve the consented calendar here. Any objection? If not, so ordered. Okay, we'll take up item I separately. Bill, you want to?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm understanding everything. And I know this is basically just setting up to come back for a full hearing. So that's one of the reasons I have questions, and maybe they could be
Sure.
ready when we do come back for the hearing.
You bet.
One is that the number of the properties that are in attachment C, page 7 of 7 on 1-61, shows all the properties that are part of the Plaza District and the explanation of the different ways that they are assessed. The area, this area here, Mr. City Manager, between Ojai Avenue and the break on the south side, there's some properties on the south side of Ojai Avenue and some not.
Correct.
Can you, is there like a one-sentence history of why we have some properties on the south side of Ojai Avenue that are part of the Plaza Maintenance District and some not, or is this the parking lot?
I believe, if I'm looking at the map correctly, that's the
That's the parking lot.
parking lot, and it may be that may be Libby Park, and then then that
that's
would be the post
okay.
office
I
parcel.
couldn't tell because the map
But-
was so messed up, I couldn't really read it. But if that makes perfect sense to me, I just wanted to make sure about
Those
that.
parcels on the south side, is that what you were questioning?
There's some
I
parcels
believe
on-
that
Yeah,
if we
it was-
call this the plaza, but in effect, it's a business promotional district, and I think these were all the businesses originally in the district. Is that not accurate?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure on the history on that, but yeah, looking at the map again, certainly those.
That's what it looks like. and I
Those
just-
properties are.
No,
are
yeah, this
city
Zone
owned.
C that's shaded in is from Topa Brewery to
Right, all the way to.
over to like
To the parking lot.
Yeah, to
Okay,
the,
I just want to make
Correct.
sure.
Where
I
Lowe's
couldn't
Commons
really
is.
want to confirm.
They're all the commercial,
and the park is all the white part.
Right.
because there's
That's
an
correct.
assessment for everything you see on that
Right.
map that helps support.
I just want to make sure I was clear on the map.
Okay.
And we assess units whether they're vacant or not?
I believe that's correct, yes, yes.
Okay. And I'm curious also, the proposal is, there's two significant changes between proposed 1920 and FY 1819. That is a threefold increase in contract services and going from 0 to 50,000 in improvements. If some of that to restore balances, past deficit balances, are, I didn't really see a listing of specific new programs. There's no change in city staff time, but a tripling almost of contract services and going from 0 to 50,000 for improvements. I didn't see an exact listing of improvements or what the improved service quality would be for that.
Yes, it's mentioned briefly in there, but the the improvements are the painting of the arcade. So that'd be the whole frontage of the arcade and the underside and the columns and so on of the arcade. So that's the 50,000 there. And then for contract services, that's primarily the custodial services are being stepped up somewhat, but primarily the landscaping would be also.
But no offset in terms of less city staff time with the tripling of contract services?
No.
Okay. So we're having an increased level of service?
Yes.
Okay. And then last quick question on city staff time. We do have cost of living increases in our city staff compensation?
Yes, we
And
do.
I'm wondering why that wouldn't be reflected in the budget.
We stay below budget anyways, but yeah, it's, we could, yeah, we didn't move that up by the slight 2% or so increase that might occur. It's because we're within that budget already.
Okay. All right, and then one last question to anticipate a further thing down. Since the new project on the next to just east of Bonnie Lou's includes the green walls that are for 3 years going to be maintained by the developer, then they go to
5
the
years,
city?
yeah.
5 years.
5 years. That would be the plaza. This would be the fund that would maintain those.
Eventually.
Okay, thank
Right.
you.
Okay.
That's it, Mayor.
Okay, any other questions on that?
If-
Okay.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, one other quick clarification I wanted to make. You know, we've gotten to the point now where we started to turn the corner on this fund. So, but one thing I want to make clear is we still have a deficit of about $150,000 in this fund. But with this, we're going to be able to start chipping that away. So you can see, we'll be able to start move, you know, as projected, we would apply that $25,000 projected surplus to start to eliminate that $150,000 deficit in the fund.
Okay, this is what, like the third or fourth year that we've been paying that back to the general fund?
That's correct.
Sounds, yeah.
Well, I would move approval with a request that when this goes to hearing, there's more information about what specifically is going to be the upgrade of services and and a clear delineation of the improvements.
Sure, we can bring that back.
Okay.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
Yeah, I just made it.
Oh, okay, is there a second to that? Second. Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, do we need a roll call on this one, Mr. City Attorney? It's a
Yes, because we're adopting
financial?
resolutions that are tied to
Right.
money, so unfortunately,
Will the
yes.
clerk please call the roll.
Councilmember Wyrick?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz?
Yes.
Councilmember Francina?
Yes.
Mayor Johnston?
Yes. Okay, we are now going to what,
The beer and the wine, item 2.
Right?
okay, we're on 2, but we're going to take 8 up before that, is that?
No, I think we were going to do 2, 3, and then 8.
Okay, got it. Okay, conditionally allow on-site sale of beer.
Mr. Mayor, I will be
Yeah.
recusing myself on this matter.
Oh, you're,
He just has too complicated a life, you know?
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Councilman is recusing himself in the discussion, having a relationship with the applicant. Mr. City Manager, would you like to introduce this, or would you introduce it?
I would be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'll keep this brief and to the point. Essentially, what is recommended before you, and again, council has had this discussion, and we are responding back to the direction from council on this matter. The recommendation is that the council introduce an ordinance. In short, this would allow for the sale of beer and wine to guests of existing legally permitted transient uses only in the city's existing M1 zone, and it would require that that existing transient use apply for and receive a CUP. Again, this is for an introduction of the ordinance. If council introduces this, we would bring this back at the May 14th meeting, and upon adoption, it would take effect 30 days thereafter. Also wanted to note that, just in terms of the narrative here, at one point when we had brought this forward to council, the city attorney and I were under the understanding that it did procedurally have to go back to the planning commission. As we talked that out further, we were able to iron out that that was not the case. That is why it is back directly here before the city council. So we were able to at least eliminate that step in the process.
And the reason for that is because it did have a hearing at the planning commission. We didn't need 2 hearings at the planning commission.
Okay.
So we were able to streamline that.
Very good. My compliments.
I'm going to move
Okay.
approval.
I'll second.
Okay, well, before we do that, we need to, are there any questions of staff? And then we have a hearing.
Yes, you do have a public hearing, correct.
And then I will
Excuse me.
open, okay, that's fine, but I like the way you're thinking, Bill. Okay. If there aren't any other questions for staff, then I will open the public hearing. And do we have any cards?
No cards.
No cards, okay, well, then I'll close the hearing. We're very efficient tonight. Okay,
Move
Bill.
approval.
Okay, we
Second.
have a motion to approve, a second?
Yes.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, will you, the clerk, please call the roll?
Councilmember Haney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick,
Yes.
Mayor Johnston,
Yes.
Councilmember Francina,
Yes.
and Councilmember Blatz is recused.
Yeah. Maybe we should tell the public we have discussed this a lot already, in case you wonder.
And if there's any doubt, you might want to interview the applicant. I think they sort of feel it's ad nauseum, but okay.
Yeah, or the
See,
chair of the planning commission, and I always want to let him,
Yeah, right. We have a
direct
couple of
questions
witnesses
him,
to this.
Mr. Phillipson.
Or rent an RV for the night. and have a beer.
Yeah. Okay, we have another public hearing coming up, consideration of an approval for a retroactive 1-year time extension to September for a design review permit on an 8-unit condominium project. Okay, and staff?
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff is requesting that you open and continue the public hearing to a date certain of May 14th, 2019. Staff needs additional time to analyze how the application or how the various code sections would apply to this application, namely the affordable housing provisions as well as the historic preservation aspects. So we're asking for more time to be able to complete that analysis. We will be able to do that and have that ready for the May 14th meeting. So again, our recommendation would be that you open and continue the hearing to the May 14th date.
Okay, do we have any questions of staff? I have one. The reason we put it on for tonight to expedite things was the key question was, does that ordinance apply? And so does this imply that it does apply? It's just a question of what the conditions or what the,
That's the implication. The reason I'm being a little bit stating implication is that we are looking both at the text of the ordinance and we're looking at the history of it to understand how the council in 2013 intended it when they adopted it as part of the housing element. So it's requiring us to take a little more time to do that
okay,
confirmation of an initial answer.
okay. So
And then further presuming that becomes true, then working with the developer on getting the necessary information.
Okay, so if I understand what you've just said, is that you are looking at the factual situation surrounding how we got to where we got to determine whether or not this actually does apply, and you're working with the applicant to clarify that?
Yes. And we had a meeting last week with the applicant and his representatives to get further information.
Okay, well then,
Mr. Mayor.
yeah, Randy?
You stated historical review. I'm looking here on the timeline for that property in December 8th, 2014. There was some form of historical review. Do you know what that was and what took place?
To clarify, when I mean historic review, I don't mean the capital H historic preservation review. I mean historic review of the affordable housing ordinance.
History of the
Thank you.
application.
Okay,
Thank
thank you for the clarification. That's fine.
The question has been raised, though, about the capital H historic analysis of this older property. A historic resource report was prepared in 2006 and is under review as to see whether that requires further analysis under the new historic preservation code that was recently adopted.
Okay, so time then to open the hearing? Okay, or was it continued? Is this the,
I'll let you answer.
Yeah, it was our recommendation is to open. If there's anyone here to speak, of course, they're welcome to speak tonight. They could also speak next time, and then
Okay.
continue.
Okay, well, the public hearing is open. I have one card. Chairman Quillisi?
Thank you, Mayor, council members, and city staff and sheriff's department. As a member of the Planning Commission, I had to recuse myself from any consideration of this project and the adjoining project called the Mallory Bungalows because it's in my neighborhood. As a public citizen, however, I rise to speak about it because it's in my neighborhood. A topic that we have covered in some detail over the past few years and continue to worry about is the presence and the availability of water for fire suppression on new projects. I'm familiar with this property because it's in my neighborhood. There is a fire hydrant on Aliso, sort of centered on the project. And there is a fire hydrant, a new fire hydrant, recently put in on Mallory Way. By one measure, that should suffice to provide fire suppression water for this project. However, my understanding is that the required, not pressure, but the required water flow for fire suppression is 1,000 gallons a minute for 2 hours. I would like to know how the city determines that this project or any project has sufficient water for fire suppression prior to allowing the project to go forward. I worry about it because if all this stuff catches on fire and we have east winds like we had during the Thomas fire, my house is in danger. And so my question is, what are the real standards for fire suppression, and how does the city verify that those standards are met prior to granting the approval of a project? Thank you.
Okay. The staff, I assume, will follow up on that. That was the only card I have for that, so now I will, Mr. City Attorney, is the action to continue the hearing?
The recommended action is to continue it to the May 14th council meeting.
Okay, do I need a motion on that, or can I just declare it?
Consensus is fine if there's no.
Okay, if
objection.
there's no objection, we will continue this public hearing, 2 more weeks? Is that going to
Yeah.
allow? Okay.
Or 3.
It's technically 3
Or
weeks
3,
to May
okay.
14th, correct?
Okay. Okay, hearing is continued. We are now on, what?
Item 8.
8, okay. Item 8 was a request from Councilman Wyrick and Haney. Does the staff have a report, or do we go directly to council that put it on the agenda?
Staff has no report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Who would like to go first?
Go ahead, Bill.
Why don't I just start out with A, and then we could go on. Last time it was in terms of the testimony, in terms of looking at the issue of a permit. We saw a situation where the building permit had been issued in a way that was not consistent with the conditions of approval. This has happened more than once, and the question was asked, what are we doing in terms of improved internal controls to ensure compliance with the condition approval contingencies, because we've had, in my view, too many examples where between the building department, the community development department, and the public works department, all have participated in not adhering to those conditions of approval, involving building permits issued out of sequence, I think is a fair way to say it. I was hoping that we would get some sort of report, because at that time, there was going to be a response in terms of a report back to council about what is going to be done to address that issue. of internal controls, and I was wondering if maybe that's still in process and we don't have a report, or just, I just wanted to kind of get an update on that. That's one of the reasons for having on the agenda tonight.
Happy to respond to that. And note, offering this not as an excuse in any way, shape, or form, we originally had that on the list for tonight's meeting, and due to a number of reasons, it got pushed back due to other priorities. We actually have that scheduled right now to come back on May 28th.
Okay.
I'm engaged with the consultant for no additional fee to do a touch-up on that, so we are revisiting some issues, and we are prepared to bring that back to council at the May 28th meeting.
Okay, all right.
Okay, good.
Rand, did you want to move on to the other ones, or?
Yeah, well, God, where do I start? So I guess, Steve, the question that was asked here is, it seems like we have staff that's making decisions out there regarding conditions of approval. And so to me, the response would be pretty simple, is have we addressed that with staff?
Yes, we have, and I'm happy if it pleases the council, I can go a step further. I can, for the time being, to assure that things are being handled properly, I can add my own set of eyes and approval to anything that goes out the door, and I'd be willing to do that to try to address the situation. I can also further sit down and build some ways that we can further train staff and address this, and I'd be happy to bring back the details on that to council as well.
Anything else, Randy?
No, I'm fine on that one. Going back to directors' exemptions protocols, we had a set of protocols and policy, and then I believe we, as a council, decided that we were going to change that and allow you to make those discretionary responses yourself. Am I correct? Is that your opinion of the new policy or the new protocols?
Actually, the original decision to make the change in how directors' exemptions were handled, that was a decision that was made by a former city manager, within their power as the city manager. I reversed that within my power as the city manager. As we advised to council, that is certainly something that council could take up if they wanted to change the code or change the process. So it was a city manager directed change, and then it was a city manager directed change to go back to the system that we were previously using, and that's the system that we're following now, with some modifications.
So do you believe it's working, and it's working well for the community, your new process?
Well, we've only had a few that have come out of the gate. So far, it appears to be working well. Obviously, the jury is out because it's only been in place for, we've only had a few that have actually been issued under the new policy.
And I just kind of add to that discussion. And maybe this is a question for both you and the city attorney. In terms of the key delineation for directors' exemptions is minor, the definition of what is minor.
Correct.
That judgment is pretty much dependent upon the judgment of yourself and the community development director, as I read the code. My question is, and this is for both of you and the city attorney and the city manager, would there be a role, short of amending the code, where the council and administration could get together on defining some protocols to define what minor and major is?
If that's the council's pleasure, I don't.
Is there any issue with that?
No, that'd be fine. The code dictates that the council, in adopting the code, delegated to the community development director the power to approve projects that he so finds are minor.
Right.
The council can add by regulation definitions of that term.
Okay, rather than by getting into an involved code issue.
Right, you
By
can adopt
resolution.
it by resolution, much as the cultural resources policy was adopted by resolution.
And I assume that, again, the findings of minor by the community development director, that is what's going on in terms of being in writing and issued and so on and so forth.
That's correct.
It's just that right now, if there's any disagreement with what the minor versus major is, it requires going to the appeal process. And that's awkward. And I'm just wondering, and that's why I asked the question, could we maybe clean this up by developing some resolution protocols into defining minor and major? And it sounds like the answer to that is yes, that's good. I would say. That's a positive.
Right.
That's an open path, sure.
Well, again, one of the issues that comes up is when we've received these DEs in the past, that we're reading into them and we're actually making decisions ourselves, are they minor or major? Then we're coming back to staff trying to get clarity. So it seems like it'd be easier having these procedures on the front end, not on each one having to have a discussion with you. I think it would save your time and the CDD director's time also.
Right.
I think it would probably benefit everybody, including the applicant.
Right, for some clarity. And then the other issue, of course, you know, and you know the instance I'm bringing up, and that is what the mechanisms for ensuring that the stipulations of a director's exemption are followed, which has not always occurred. And I mean, that pretty as much as a completely, and I guess it's a question for both of you, when the stipulations of a director's exemption are not followed, is that something that still resides in the community development director and building department's house, or does that have to go to code enforcement?
That does
After
not.
the fact, after it's done and it's not in compliance with the stipulations? In other words, can the certificate of occupancy be held up until you get compliance, or does it become a code enforcement issue once it's been installed?
Well, certainly if it's contingent on a certificate of occupancy, then we could and we should be holding that up.
Okay.
Yeah, if a permit or a subsequent permit for a multi-permit phase project or a certificate of occupancy has not yet been issued, it can certainly be held up pending compliance with conditions.
Mm-hmm.
If it was already issued and a condition issue arises later, the cow's out of the barn, so to speak, then we can revoke the permit, although that takes a process, or it can go through the code enforcement notice of violation process.
Okay.
And those can kind of operate in parallel.
Because we have some situations where the director's exemption stipulations include items that are not subject to a building permit.
Correct.
So they can get built without a permit, but then they're still not in compliance with the DE stipulation.
I understood. Yeah, understand.
And just curious about how that's handled.
Okay, we can come back on the 28th and specifically to address that. I understand the question.
Okay, well, without beating it to death tonight without more information, it seems that when I first saw this, I was wondering, you know, why are we getting into this? But there seemed like there's two clear paths. One that says we want to expedite things in a way that is customer friendly to get things done and not tie people up in red tape.
Right.
And to do that, you have to delegate some judgment. On the other hand, once there are conditions, the conditions need to be enforced. And in the case of things that have gone through the Planning Commission, and the conditions were very specific, and then certificates of occupancy were issued without those conditions met, it just seems that that part of it should be relatively simple to sort out. That should not be a judgment call at the lower staff level. That should come from the city manager or the council or the Planning Commission. So, okay, so this will come back when?
May 28th.
May 28th. Okay, is there any other?
One more item.
One last thing real quick, though. It's almost like we need to create something called the four-way test.
Is it the truth?
Before.
And we have all heard that before.
Right, yeah,
But the interesting thing is, again, ultimately what happens is you get an unsatisfactory rating from council. You get a unsatisfactory rating from the public because they're the ones we've impacted by creating this gray area. So as soon as we can clear that up, it's going to benefit all.
Agreed.
And the last point I wanted to bring up was zoning issues. Zoning issues are totally and completely within the purview of city council, as I understand the municipal code.
Staff and your city manager agree with that. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, when I just want to make sure we're clear. I think that when there is to me, when something is clearly within the purview of the city council, that if there's a gray area that occurs in somebody's mind, it should be resolved towards the direction of city council review, in the sense of, especially when you're dealing with something as critical as rezoning.
Agreed.
Okay, I just want to express that.
Okay, and following up on that, where are we on the general plan RFP?
Actually, we will be coming to you on the 14th with a schedule on that, and.
Okay, because that fits right into, if the master plan of the community is not updated for, 40 years, it makes it difficult, because zoning is supposed to follow that. And zoning has become an issue, mainly on procedure, as opposed to,
Policy, right.
yeah, the judgment, then that's a legal issue, so, okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Is there anything else on that? If not, okay, we will go back now, and we're going to be on, somebody help me here with the numbers.
Number 4.
Number 4, okay. Of course, number 4 always follows number 8. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. All right. Okay, so, Mr. City Manager.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This item was discussed at the April 9th meeting. It is back. Hopefully you have all received your handouts and plans there in a format that you can read and understand. I will be asking Mr. Connolly, our Community Development Director, to step up and walk us through what we have here, and I believe we do have some slides to show, and the applicant is also here to answer any questions, and also.
I think we have some slides to show.
Okay. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Connolly.
Okay, this is very, very brief, and it's just based on, in case there are questions, I think you all got full-size plans, because I think the issues last time were, one, readability. It was reduced to too small a level to be readable, and you didn't have properly dimensioned plans on there, so.
Lou, Mayor, can I interject something real quick? Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
I
The
know it can be
magnifying glass
awkward.
never came out. I just wanted to say thank you. So you
No,
responded
you're-
to everything that we asked for, and again, thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm hoping those aren't too unwieldy, though, unfolding.
No, great.
Okay, so this is essentially the one-sheet plan that is before you. So, one of the issues, oh, I'm sorry, what that? Let's go back. So one of the issues was the dimension of the brick walkway, which wasn't shown. The brick walkway is 7 feet wide. The walkway's entire dimension is 9 feet wide. So the 2 feet closest to the wall on Bonnie Lou, which is landscaped there with the trees, that's a 2-foot area, so the trees would be going in there, the additional landscaping with the green screen, which would, the top of that would be 8 feet, 6 inches above grade. The screen itself is 8 feet. It's 6 inches clear at the base. I believe there are 15 panels. They're 4 feet wide. So they run along the length of the wall parallel to Bonnie Lou. As I said, that gap between the brick and the wall is 2 feet. The green screen sits in approximately the center, so it's about a foot from the building wall. You've got some fairly simple landscaping in there. You would have an evergreen vine planted on the green screen itself. You've got trailing rosemary running along that at the ground level. So they're pretty much at the ground level. You've got the green screen there, and then 4 new trees. These are not the podocarpus trees that are there today. Would be planted up against essentially the Bonnie Lou wall. Again, it's a pretty narrow area. It's 110 feet long, 9 feet wide. The brick walkway is 7 feet. What we did include in here, in case anybody wanted to talk about the existing trees, is photos of the site. This is again from the rear looking towards Ojai Avenue. These trees are in a similar location to what would be planted in that they're up against the wall. You would probably have to modify the planting wells. No, probably you would have to if you wanted to retain these. So I know this had come up at prior meetings, so we just wanted to have some photos on hand for these trees that are there. But again, the one sheet that we showed tonight does not include the retention of these trees, but you would have new trees planted instead of them. And I believe that is it. So,
I have a question on the first slide. If
sure.
The arc elements there in the middle of those trees in the 7-foot paver, are those traversable by wheelchairs? Are those just decorative pavers on the same plane as the rest of the pavers?
Okay, let me make sure. Where are we talking?
You know,
about?
there's an arc of paving. There's 4 of them that show that go into the regular into the normal running bond area. There's 4 arcs protruding from the
so essentially
Bonnie
like
Lou side.
From the base of the tree.
From the base of the tree.
So-
Are those traversable in the same plane as the pavers?
I do not know. I would assume the goal is it's a walkway that you're going to want it level and ADA compliant.
I think he's saying yes.
Mr. Turner can answer.
Okay.
It would have to be.
Hey, Ben.
Hi,
Hey, Ben.
I'm Ben Turner. Yes, they are traversable. We do have detailing when it comes to the building department. We have to make this, the code is the maximum length of the gap in a tree grate or any opening in the public right-of-way can be 1/2 inch. And if it's elongated, if it's, for example, 1/4 inch wide but 3 inches long, that primary direction has to be in the same direction as the path of as the accessible route is going, so that nobody sort of tram lines into too wide a gap or goes over a bump. Also, the code also requires a beveling of any step up that is 1/2 inch. You can bevel 1/4 inch and go up 1/4 inch, or you can
Right.
bevel at
I
45
know,
degrees. Very smooth.
So
very
that's what these
traversable.
are. These are smooth. Okay.
Yes.
While you're there, a couple more questions.
I'm sorry, those are the tree grates for getting water,
Right.
natural water in and
Right.
drainage away from the watering, yeah.
And the post for the green walls, they're not freestanding. They're freestanding on posts going to be put into near the wall. How far are those posts from the wall? Because I believe the property line is right on the wall. Is that correct?
You know, I don't have a dimension of that,
Okay.
but we have to set it away from the wall to get enough space for a centered footing.
No,
even
of
if-
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
And to maintain the vine.
and, yeah, that's what I was asking, and to maintain the vine, right?
Yeah, but I don't have an exact dimension, sorry.
Okay. And the tree ranch railing is entirely on your side of the lot line?
Yes, and
That
maintained by
runs
us.
along there until the wall starts up again near Ojai Avenue?
Yes.
And the 4 little protrusions into the, there's 4 little squares that are in the pavers on your side. I assume those are the relocated light standards? Light columns?
There are 3 light standards.
3 of
2
them? Yeah, there's
existing,
3 of
1
them,
new.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
not 4.
Yes.
Those are the relocated lights?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a
Okay,
question.
other questions?
I have a question. Would you
Susan?
please clarify again what I think I heard you say, well, I'm not sure what you said, about the existing trees along Bonnie Lou's wall, because they're very healthy looking. What is the decision that you're still discussing whether you're going to take those down and replace them? Or what?
No,
Because-
this site plan has them being removed and replaced with ornamental pear or Hymenaspermum, which is an Australian evergreen tree. So the equal spacing of the 4 trees shown there, those would be new trees.
So are you saying that you're going to remove or,
Correct.
okay, because it seems to me that was not what we decided. Because you're showing fully grown trees, and it looks great, but if you remove what's there, that's the shade, and it's my understanding that's going to take a while before you have what's shown on your map. So,
Well, of course, yeah, these would be newly planted trees. I think the goal in showing the existing trees was if there was a desire to retain those trees. But there wouldn't be room for both, to put the 4 trees in that are going to get, say, 30, 40 feet high in themselves. It would be at least that scale. So yes, you do have these existing trees. I think there's about 5 of them now of different sizes. Some are multi-trunk. But yes, they're evergreen trees. They look like they're perfectly healthy. I understood from prior discussions before I was here that there was there was a discussion about retaining them or not. But on the site plan itself, the trees shown would be new. And of course, they're not going to be that big at the time they're planted, but would ultimately be, say, the size of the trees that are there or larger. So I think the goal in showing the existing trees was just if there was a desire to retain them, I think you would have to modify then the exact location of the tree wells to keep those trees. So it would be similar.
I do have a desire to retain them,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we've got that, and Luke is not doing any of this. He is merely
Yeah,
passing along what the applicant is doing, and so why don't we have Ben come up and address that. I do believe in our previous discussion, there was a desire to keep the healthy, large ones, at least until the newer ones towards the front had some maturity. I don't know if that was practical or not.
I believe Bill Mellett, the landscape architect, evaluated them and has told us that because of the way that they were essentially, some of them were volunteers, and the way they weren't planned plantings, and so the root structure is so close to the surface that there's two concerns. One is that when we take up the grade to put the walkway back down, that they would not survive. And even if they were to survive, their rooting would uneven the brickwork, which is a public right-of-way, which would bring liability to the city, even if not to us. But because we're developing it, we wanted to bring that to your attention. I'll be honest with you, it would be, of course, cheaper for the applicant to acquiesce and say, well, that's great, go ahead and keep those. But his determination was that the shade provided by this species of tree is going to be better at our cost, easily maintained, and a better example of the tree. He doesn't think that those trees are indeed as healthy as they might first appear.
So Mayor, quickly, I think the discussion in the past was always about were we going to keep these trees or not. It wasn't that we were, it was, the discussion always was, will we or won't we? So just to clarify that. But more importantly is what he's talking about regarding the rooting of these trees and how they've grown in over the years is the fact that with all that lawn near there, that's why these surface roots have developed, is the fact that that's where they're looking for water. So the new trees obviously would be deep watered and be maintained properly. That's the other thing. Aesthetically, first of all, I went online and I Googled all the trees and all the plant material. They're all water-wise. That's the most important thing. Aesthetically, it's a lot more appealing to this new environment to create a new environment. And it would also, those trees would go really well with the new screening that's going on. In fact, I personally wanted the screening to go taller, so I think 8 feet is limited. I'd rather see it at 10 or 12, other than the difficulty in maintaining it. But you can see aesthetically that it's beautiful. Everything about this is an enhancement for that space. And the difficulty in keeping the podocarpus would be how do you balance it and align it so it looks as nice as this drawing, and I think it would be difficult to achieve that.
So explain, because I know there's other members of the public that are interested in what's going to happen. At what point do you remove the existing trees? What's the procedure for that? Like what time of year are you doing that? And how long does it take before is there going to be a period of just barrenness? Do you understand my question?
Yes, I do. The intent is as soon as we obtain the building permit, the clients have waiting to go. I mean, they want to start and finish. They're frustrated. If anything, they would have started yesterday if you'd given them the chance. So I consider that this phase won't be a demolition and a blight lingering on. This will be started, worked through, and finished. We're going to obviously keep the right-of-way open for the public as we have to by condition. So we have to barricade, but once we start, it's strip, move, get it back, and get it open, because time is money.
Yeah. Is there an estimated time for that project?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Let me confer briefly to get you an answer on that, if I may.
That would be the question I think Susan's asking, is what is the timeline of construction or development of this site? Is it 6 months? Is it 8 months? Is it?
Once we get the permit, 3 months would be the goal, 3 to 4 months.
That's fast.
Is there anything living in there?
Grass and podocarpus.
No.
You're talking about the birds or something?
No, is there any, you know?
Well, but I don't know, where's the applicant? Have they had to do a study? Is there anything in the, that we require?
We generally require a nesting bird survey for kind of a pre-walkthrough before you have a tree removal, and that would apply here as well. I'm not sure if they've already done that type of assessment yet. I'll look to Mr. Turner on that
Yeah,
point.
especially this time of year.
Not yet. What we do, we have to wait until, because there's a time frame between when you've got to submit the report, we have to wait for the building permit to be ready. Otherwise, we'd have done 5 of these tree reports by now.
Yeah.
So we do them immediately prior to make sure that there's nothing there.
Okay,
Okay.
so that will be done.
Okay, Bill,
Yes.
did you have a?
Okay.
Yeah, I just had a couple more questions of Mr. Connolly. A couple provisions in here having to do with the final lighting plan and the payment of the in lieu parking fees are supposed to be done prior to the issuing of building permit. I was wondering, first of all, is the final lighting plan been submitted for approval to the planning department yet?
The applicant may be able to answer that better than I am. I've not seen it. It may have been submitted. Same thing
Okay,
with
it
the in
just
lieu
says it's
fees.
supposed to come to your department and.
Yeah, this could have been submitted
and
a
it
couple
would-
of years ago.
And that's supposed to be submitted for approval by the planning department prior to the issue of any building permits.
Correct.
And also, has the in lieu parking fee been paid?
That I would have to check as well, unless it was paid much earlier, because I think what the original approval of this was
That was
2017.
that's also supposed to be paid prior to the issuance of any building permit for the project.
Right.
Do we have any idea how much that is?
I think it's something in the neighborhood of like 6,000 per space, and I'm not sure
There's
what the
4
exact
spaces.
number. So if it's 4, and so we're talking $20,000.
So that'll be attended to in terms of following that provision?
Yes, absolutely. And again, it may have been already paid. I can verify that.
I'm just asking, and then one last question. Does this qualify for the public art? Have we done a building valuation on that yet? According to the ICC valuation procedure, has the building department done that yet?
I'd have to confer with the building department, and I'd be happy to do that.
All right, that was item 25. And then this is probably a question for Mr. Summers. Item 15, attachment B, page 7 of 13 of City Council Resolution 17-55 mentions the standard language on within 1 year of design review permit approval, the permit shall be exercised in compliance with. I assume that clock starts after we've approved the final walkway?
Yeah, and the
And then
development
and I
agreement-
asked you about the development agreement, which is 5 years.
Right.
But this says 1 year, and I'm just trying to reconcile the two statements.
In the event of conflict, the development agreement controls.
Okay, that's
And
what
so
I need to know.
that set up a phasing system, and that's specified in item 4.
Okay.
Under, which is in the packet pages, page 427.
I
It
just
sets
want
up
to,
an order, but yeah.
understand.
Short answer.
I saw 1 year there and 5 year there, and I just wanted to ask questions.
Short
All right.
answer, development agreement controls,
Okay,
and
thank you.
those other conditions all
Okay.
will apply.
Okay, one other question. You know, the front of the building is a trolley stop, and there's a trolley bench, and that still is going to belong to the city, right? That's the city's responsibility? The bench in front of the building. There were people sitting on it, and I was in a hurry, so I forgot to see if it was still that old dilapidated bench or if we improved it since the last time. I mentioned it last time. There's this old, sad bench there, and we should
Gosh,
be.
I was just there today. I don't think I looked, so.
Let's have a look, let's take a
All
good
right.
look, because we want to encourage people, you know, and that doesn't prohibit us from doing any improvements, and nothing, your business.
That's
Yeah,
that's a separate issue. That
it's a
would be on the
total-
public right away.
It's
in the
public
front.
right away.
Right.
Okay, I just
That's
want to make
correct.
sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, are they required to do bicycle parking?
I believe there was bicycle parking already included in the project.
Yeah, on
Just
the
wanted
other
to
side.
On the other side,
Okay.
at the 334
Other end,
building.
There's a
Right.
bicycle parking area.
Yeah, but you know, what I'm noticing is because we didn't specify, and at least one new business in town, the Sane Center, and actually another one, the coffee shop on North Signal, they are doing hanging bicycle parking, which is totally doesn't work for people who use their bikes for transportation. So I don't know, that's a separate issue, but we've got to look at the code and make sure that this is real bicycle parking for people that are using just normal cycling around town, not just lightweight bikes
I
that
think
you
that
can
whole
hang
square
up.
on the
Mm.
left upper
Yeah.
is bicycle parking area, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, on the ground. That whole
Yeah.
enclosure there is
And
bicycle parking.
That's additional to there's a three sad, but there's a little bit of bike parking in the back. I know because I used it all the time when,
Right.
because I taught at the yoga studio in the back there.
Right.
This is additional bicycle parking.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is a serious issue because we have clumps of bikes all over town now that are just kind of clumped together on the ground even sometimes.
Right.
So we got to make sure that we do that right.
Well, we can specify in permits going forward too, not
Yeah.
only location, but number and type.
Yeah.
So if you want an enclosed locker, for instance, you need to specify what type of bicycle parking. So essentially like the sheets here, like what you have for your green wall, you do something similar for your bike parking. So you'd have an example, you know, on any upcoming projects, we could easily change that so it's more clear about the nature of the bike parking that you want.
Okay. I'm not prepared to specify it at the
No,
moment.
but I just, so that way you get the type of bicycle parking you're expecting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but this is being approved, is it not?
Yeah, I don't know if we need to open a
Right,
hearing.
with a, you're
Need to
right.
open a hearing?
I was just going to say, I mean, if we're offering our discussion on it, I think the applicant did a really good job. I think this area has always been a kind of a disconnect from the arcade area that's so nice to that separate building where the I believe where the real estate the Realtors Association is. And I think that this is an example that other applicants can look at for, there may be some things that need to be cleaned up and some other concerns, but this is the kind of example of those projects that are right for Ojai. I think the new trees, and I do understand your concerns, Sousa, but ultimately, this is gonna fit in so well with the ATP and the way it's gonna be redesigned in downtown. This is gonna bring kind of a full completion of that. So I just wanna say, I think it looks amazing. I think it's good. I think the green wall's really awesome. I think the pavers are great. I think it's a really well thought out and something that's needed. So thank you.
And I do believe there's some kind of a program, Cycle California, or, for the 3 counties, where there are bonuses or advantages, I should say, that the Ojai Valley Inn has taken them up on, with providing good bicycle parking and then being advertised as a part of a loop. There's through Santa Barbara, Ventura, and up through Ojai. So I'm sure that this can be worked out. So, okay, well,
Do you have any cards, or?
do we have no cards?
Then I'll make a motion.
Okay, I'm ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion approving the final design of the relocated city walkway as proposed and subject to conditions of approval contained in City Council Resolution 17-55.
Is there a second? Okay, moved and seconded. Mr. City Attorney, can this be by consensus, or do we require a?
Consensus unless there's a dissenting vote.
Okay, is there any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, let's.
I have one more request.
It's,
Wait, is it closed?
we don't get to just keep making requests. I'm happy to talk with them later, but.
No, this is important for the public. I will not be.
Or was that a
I
dissenting?
will not be silenced. We need bird baths all over town. Okay, we truly do, especially in the hot weather. So maybe, and the public will like it if you put a bird bath in. There should be a little spot somewhere. That's all.
Like
Thank
watching
you.
the birds in the
Yeah.
outside
They're
patio.
going to come anyway to eat crumbs.
No,
They need water.
Okay, thank you. We are now moving along. What is our, we've gone to, are we on number 5? Pickleball.
Ooh.
I love what you
We got
do.
enough, look at that. We got enough cards to start a league here.
Okay, I do have cards on this topic. This was put on by, Councilman Haney, and I don't know who's, without, I guess, objection. I must say that the process seems like we may be duplicating, since this is on the agenda for the Parks and Recreation Commission, and so I guess my inclination is to make a motion to refer it back to them and not to take it out of line, but it's on the agenda, so we have an opportunity to talk, and we have a lot of folks apparently who have arrived tonight to give us their opinions. So, Randy, do you want to kick this off?
Well, first, it's interesting. First of all, I have a jacket on, otherwise I'd stand up and expose that target that everyone that wants to bat a tennis ball at me with. I'd allow it only one shot at a time.
You make a great target, too.
So, having said that, what I wanted to clarify to this community and to everyone that's here, because this is what happens whenever we have a something that's debatable, is it's read into it that it's we're going to make a decision tonight, and therefore you're not involved and you don't get a say in it, and the 5 of us up here are just going to make this decision. The reality is, I pushed this forward and pushed it harder so that we could have a discussion. That's what this is tonight. It's a discussion of how we can enhance the sport of pickleball in our community. It's not tonight to say we're going to take a court from Libby Park, or we're going to do this or do that. We're going to have hopefully, a lot of powerful suggestions from the community on their thoughts on where they would want to put it or see it. And then again, speaking to what the mayor said, out of this discussion tonight, send it back to the Parks Commission with a lot of these thoughts and let them debate it and let them have another opportunity for the public to weigh in. That's my goal, so I just wanted to clarify that from the front end. There's no decision going to be made tonight. It's going to be an opportunity for all of us to discuss that sport, the benefits of that sport, and how it is possible that the tennis capital of the United States, Ojai, can actually, or would want to be, maybe the pickleball capital of Ojai also, so, of the United States. So there we go. Mayor, that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Randy. I have a bunch of cards, so unless there's something else from the dais, I will invite the public to weigh in. I've got one here from Tim Kraut.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tim, before you speak, and Mayor, I gave, in this discussion tonight, there's going to be a lot of misunderstanding as how a pickleball can be applied to a standard tennis court, and Tim did send me some copies. I have spares. Each of you have one. In fact, if the public would like some of these, Tim, if anyone wants to raise their hand, and we can pass that out to them, you can let them look at it too, or just hand it to the public. Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you, Mayor.
and Mark Weil is on deck.
Good evening. My name's Tim Kraut, 230 Saddle Lane, and I'm kind of the guy that started this thing about 4 years ago. I started playing pickleball, having to drive to Santa Barbara, Ventura, Pleasant Valley, Rancho Caneo, and as I was doing that, I was thinking, why don't we have something here in town that the community, that other people could use? So my wife and I started just on a leap of faith that in 2017, we decided to start the sport here. So we did that. We contacted the school district. We had to pay liability insurance to use their courts. And I just went out there and sat during the day and weekends, and sometimes nobody came. 18 months later, I have 60 people signed up. Now, they're not always coming at the same time, but we've got a good core, about 18 to 20 people. So it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of benefits. The benefit that I like the most is getting new relationships, forming new relationships with the community. People that I've never known, never met before. Now I'm meeting those people, seeing where they're coming from and what they're about. I've been here since 1961 in this town, 58 years. I've been through a lot of tennis tournaments. I've seen a lot of people come and go. So I feel like I'm part of the community. I haven't just been here 4 or 5 years, but 58 years. So now that this sport that I have taken on and have just really enjoyed, I would like to also present that to the community, to families, to youngsters. I would like to get it involved in the school district so that all people could enjoy it, not just, say, retirees. I'm also getting people signed up that are ex-tennis players. They can no longer cover the wide courts that a tennis court has. So with pickleball court, you're dealing with 20 feet wide, 40 feet long. You can get 4 pickleball courts on 1 tennis court. So that's 4 times the use. I also understand that Ojai is a tennis town. I get that. And I'm not here to change that. What I'm here for is to add to the recreation department so that other people can enjoy this sport. not just the 60 that have signed up now. That's why I'm here.
Okay, well, thank you, Tim.
Uh-huh.
Mark, you're up with Jim McCarthy on deck.
I'm going to defer to, can I defer to Mike Borders? Or just the next card? Carolyn Burke. Well, Carolyn Burke.
Oh, okay.
May I please?
Sure. Mark, are you going to still want to talk later?
Later on.
Okay. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Burke, and I'm speaking tonight as the president of the Ojai Valley Tennis Club. As a club, we have shown our commitment to creating a tennis facility at Libby Park, not only for our use, but also for the use of the city of Ojai and the community of Ojai as a whole for over 100 years. We historically, as will be addressed by one of our other speakers, the tennis club has funded a substantial portion of the major construction and maintenance costs for the 8 courts at Libby Park. We also provide the primary funding to replace nets, wash courts, and replace windscreens. We even purchased a scissor lift for the city to use to replace light bulbs on the courts. We also pay a percentage of the cost to repair the wooden bleachers at Upper Libby. The Ojai Valley Tennis Club does host the Ojai Tennis Tournament the last week of April every year. In fact, tomorrow starts the 119th Ojai Tournament. It's the oldest tournament in the United States in one location. It also has more entrants than any other tennis tournament in the world. This event brings people from all over the world to Ojai. They eat in our restaurants, they stay in our hotels, they shop in our stores. This brings a lot of revenue and exposure to Ojai. The Ojai hosts the Pac-12 championships, the CIF division, juniors, our open division, and during the Ojai we even have a quick start tournament for our local students. We use every court at Libby Park. The courts need to be in pristine condition, the condition that we keep them in, to be suitable to host all of these events. Some people think that we use Libby Park only for the Ojai, but that's not true. We have created a tennis facility for the city and the community. The Libby Park courts are used daily by the city tennis director, Scott Burton, for tennis clinics and lessons, for the Wild Tennis Academy, the USTA League play for both adults and junior teams. We have Ventura County junior tennis events. We have tournaments that we host, and we have other youth clinics. So the courts are very well used. The Ojai Valley Tennis Club is the primary financial sponsor of the city's recreational tennis program by providing scholarship funds for juniors to participate in the city's tennis program. The amount varies from year to year, but it's no less than $10,000 a year for scholarships and equipment. For these reasons, the Ojai Valley Tennis Club is opposed to using any of the Libby Park tennis courts for pickleball. Libby Park is an historic tennis facility that has been in existence for over 100 years. The Ojai Valley Tennis Club is not in any way opposed to pickleball. We believe that there are many viable alternatives to using courts at Libby Park. A more appropriate long-term solution can be found in the Ojai Valley, and we would be willing to work with and together to find a more suitable location for pickleball. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Carolyn. Jim McCarthy with Scott Burton on deck.
I'm not going to speak. I'd be redundant.
Oh, okay. Hi, Jim. Scott Burton with Mike Borders on deck.
Good evening, Council and members of the community. My name is Scott Burton, 340 Longhorn Lane here in town. I took over the directorial position here 2 years ago. So hearing some of these numbers that are tossed around, 100 years, 58 years, I pale in comparison. But I've been a county resident for over 30 years. I've been a professional tennis coach for about 20 years and employed at the Thatcher School before I took the position here at the city. And so that was great, Randy. Yes.
I'm sorry. Can you clarify? Are you with the Recreation and Parks Department?
I am.
Okay, Great.
I am Parks and Recreation Director of Tennis for the City of
Okay,
Ojai.
thank you. I'm sorry.
Sorry if I misstated that.
No, I'm sorry. Thank you.
But, so I'm here tonight to voice my opinion on this. I love Libby Park. It's a dream come true job for me. And I work every week with about 70 juniors, youngsters we have, and about 115 to 120 adults weekly. And back in November, we began a program, an experimental program with the Ojai Valley Pickleball folks, and it ran from November to March. And we granted Court 6 to them for temporary lines, which were chalk. And at one time, I saw 3 of them come out, but most evenings it was Tim out there. And I understand to get something started, you need to start with 0. And I trust they have a good following. I want to be clear, our goal is for them to succeed. We want pickleball to have a place, a destination, a permanent location. My goal is just to keep Libby Park tennis from a historical standpoint. Let's see. You know, I'm going to go through some cryptic notes that I wrote down here. I was speaking to a friend of mine today on the phone up in Stanford, a gentleman by the name of Dick Gould, who is the coach there for about 28 years and 17 national titles. And I wanted to get his opinion on our dilemma down here, our location. And he was quick to tell me that Carolyn mentioned that the Ojai Valley Tennis Club funded approximately 85% of the cost of those current courts right now. And this is for improvement, upkeep, and general well-being of the facility. Another thing he mentioned that was very interesting to me was that when we build a tournament, we work in groups of 4, 8, 12, 16 courts. And if you go down one court and you have that odd number, it makes it very difficult for draws and to actually hold a tennis tournament. So the integrity of us holding our 8 courts is very important to us. And our goal is to further our discussion and find pickleball an applicable home that everybody can agree on.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question? I mean, it would stand to reason that during the tennis tournament, if there was shared use, that they would not have pickleball. So that just seems reasonable. But I'm still not clear. Would you have objection if they shared in the maintenance? What are the actual objections?
My objection would be that if I have 2 objections. As a player, if we had permanent lines put down, let's say we agreed to do this and we had pickleball lines put down on a tennis court, it would be a lot of confusion from a line standpoint. And one of my major concerns is the Pac-12 participation in our tournament. They need 8 usable courts. And if there's any conflict with that, they can take their tournament somewhere else, their portion of the tournament.
But if there was no pickleball during any tournament, any special time, when you need all the courts, and it was my understanding that the lines were temporary.
That's correct. In our experiment, they were chalk lines. Matilla, I think they used tape lines, but our lines were chalk and easily removed.
So I'm still not understanding the objection.
My objection is to permanent lines and a permanent
Okay.
court for pickleball. We need to keep our tennis courts for
Okay,
primarily
so,
tennis.
but so I understand now. Your objections are permanent, taking up one of the courts and permanent lines. But are you objecting to temporary lines and temporary, I understand there's a net or something, and maybe one of the pickleball people can explain what they have in mind. But are you objecting to any pickleball use or just certain?
What I'm suggesting is that we have a plan through our dialogue and we have a direction that we're going so we can find them a permanent location. If that means we have temporary lines down until we can come up with a location for them, I'm willing to consider that, and I think there has to be some leeway beyond, here on this, and I think the community is a realist in this situation. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Ryan.
City Manager. Can Steve weigh in?
Go ahead, Steve.
Do what?
Steve wanted to weigh in.
If I may, no disrespect to the speaker, but You are a member of the city staff, and as the city staff, I just want to make it very clear to the council that we do not have an objective. We do not have an objective here. We are neutral. We are here to provide for you the needs of the recreation of the community in the way that the council best decides and decides and determines that to be. So if the council wants us to move forward with whatever direction it be on recreation, an intensification, a de-intensification, whatever that may be, we're certainly all ears to that. So I do appreciate the comments that you've provided in terms of the recreation instruction. But again, that is one perspective of one staff member. But I want to assure you, as your city manager, that we are waiting to take the council's lead on this one. Thank you.
When the pickleball, when the chalk is laid out, or in the experiment, was it laid out each time they were going to play, and then it was removed as soon as they were done playing, or was it there?
It was left.
It was left. Okay. So
And-
somebody, because you can't, the chalk on the court, on a tennis court, is a big problem, because the tennis ball hits the chalk, it's not going to respond exactly the same. So was the problem the chalk left over, or was it okay that the chalk was there and that was no
It
big
was
deal?
okay. It was okay. Some of our juniors, I use all the courts with the kids, and I have them out playing, and it was just something new. So the kids were like, "What's this, coach?" You know, I'm confused. I'm looking at the one line, and I should be looking at the other. So, but
Okay,
it was.
and I'm thinking of chalk like laid out like on a baseball field. This is more like just a
This
line
is
drawn.
probably a half
Okay.
inch line.
Yeah. And so other than needing to clean it up, but other than that, there was no impact as far as playing tennis if the chalk was left over. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And these are being handled both as people in their official capacities in a sense of expertise and also as citizens, just as we did with our chairman from our planning commission.
The ball bounces both
Everybody,
ways.
this is just a discussion, so. Mike Borders, come on down, and Katrina Schmidt is on deck.
Well, some of my comments have been appropriate already, but I wanted to, I think the council is well aware how special tennis is to the city of Ojai, how unique Ojai is, so we all understand that. Carolyn has talked about the Ojai Valley Tennis Club. I think you guys have a pretty good understanding of that organization. The third, besides the city and the Ojai Valley Tennis Club, the third major player in the whole Libby Park scene, of course, is the Ojai Civic Association.
Right.
Which is a nonprofit organization that goes back to the 1915 era when Edward Drummond Libby donated the park to the Civic Association, and they've maintained and operated the park, including the tennis courts, for 55 years until they turned the park and the courts over to the city in about 1970. So over the years since 1970, those three parties have worked out sort of a unique relationship in terms of sharing the cost of construction and maintenance of those courts. I've got a whole number of major projects going back to the year 2000. I'm not going to bore you by going through the amounts and the relative splits on each of those projects. Suffice it to say that there was about $700,000 spent in major construction and maintenance projects over that 20-year period. $600,000 was from the Ojai Valley Tennis Club and the Civic Association, and about $100,000 was from the city. So everybody acknowledges that the park, all the amenities, the tennis courts are legally the property of the city. However, we feel that making such a substantial financial contribution gives us a seat at the table in terms of how those courts are used. It's the tennis club's view that, consistent with our stipulated charitable purposes, we absolutely intended that those courts would be used for tennis activities sponsored by the tennis club, as well as tennis activities in the community. We never considered pickleball at the time we spent the money, and donated these projects to the city. If we had, I can tell you we would have rejected that possibility because it's not consistent with our charitable mission, which is to support tennis and provide tennis facilities for the youth of the Ojai Valley. I've talked with Dean Vadney, the president of the Ojai Civic Association. Unfortunately, they could not send anybody tonight to the meeting. He authorized me to relay to you, the council, that the board of the Civic Association concurs completely with the tennis club position, which is those courts should be reserved exclusively for tennis, no pickleball. We also believe that the city of Ojai, community of Ojai, the valley, the Ojai tournament community overwhelmingly concurs in our view that those tennis courts should be reserved for tennis. I have 344 signatures on a petition opposing any pickleball at Libby Park. And that's something we've gathered just in the last 4 days, since we only became aware of this meeting 4 days ago. Now, having said all that, you can see our view. Our view is pickleball's great. Let's support pickleball, just not at Libby Park courts. Maybe there's another spot at Libby Park we can put in a pickleball venue. I think the administrative report that the city manager put out on April 12th mentions a number of viable options. I think there probably are a number of other options that weren't considered in that report, maybe outside the city limits of Ojai. I mean, you need a flat concrete area.
Okay.
Maybe you need lights, maybe not, but I'm sure we can come up with something.
Okay, thank you,
We
Mike.
just focus on it. Okay, thank you.
Appreciate your remarks. Katrina, you're up, and Howard Radding on deck.
My comments would be duplicative, so I'm going to defer to the next person.
Is this ditto? Okay, got it. Okay, Howard, you're up, and then Mark, if you're still interested in commenting, you're welcome.
Hello, Howard Radding. Couple of things, good evening, City Council. To make aware, because I play all these sports, there is pickleball at Soul Park. Philippe, who's in the crowd, and a few other people originally petitioned the defunct tennis courts through the county. They raised the money, and they converted the 2 non-used defunct tennis courts to paddle tennis courts. We had 3 out there. Ultimately, within the past couple of years, pickleball showed up. They started taping and chalking off our courts. And then they were, I believe, have approval, and they did spray and put 1 nice court. So there is a court out there. If they can get lights, that would be great. It is an impact on our paddle tennis, but we're generally only out there on the weekends, and people seem to get along. One thing I'd like to point out that everybody needs to think about when they're making this decision as to whether to give up these precious tennis courts, particularly if you're talking about putting 4 pickleball courts on 1 tennis court.
See, I knew a tennis ball was coming.
If we sit and play tennis, this for a while.
Everybody move away from Randy.
I knew, Howard, I knew you were going to
coming,
bring
yeah.
a tennis ball out.
That's the way you find out there's any
Hear how
dogs in there.
quiet that was? And what happens when you watch professional tennis? What do people do? They're respectful and they're quiet.
Oh, all the time,
Because
right?
tennis takes a lot of concentration and focus to play
Yeah.
properly.
Except for the grunting that it seems to be taking.
Which I'm famous for.
Yeah.
Exactly, so let's start playing pickle. And let's put 4 of these next to a court and everything that brings with it. And I think we really need to be very considerate of this, because although these are both sports that involve either a paddle and a ball or a racket and a ball, they are not compatible in close proximity. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Radding. Okay. Mark.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Weil. I'm the vice president of the Ojai Valley Tennis Club and resident in Ojai for 22 years. Anyway, I don't think I need to say anything else except that, I guess I'm a little shocked that this has gotten this far, to be honest. And I'm not against pickleball. I don't play it yet, but I'm sure I will at some point. play it, and I think Tim's got a good point. They should have a place to play. But we can find that. That seems like we can find a solution. But, you know, when we want something, we go out and we fundraise for it. And if we need lights, we're going to fundraise and get lights. Skate Park did that, right? Skate Park fundraised, got their money, got lights, got their space. If a group came and said, hey, we want to play badminton at the Libby Bowl on stage, we just like it. It's covered. We won't get wet. The lights are good. The view is great. You guys would say that's ridiculous. You can't.
Don't give anybody ideas.
Yeah, no. Simmer down, Johnny. Simmer down.
Because somebody will ask.
Simmer down. I got a
we
minute
have a lot of
56 left.
imagination here.
So you know, to me, that's how it hit me. Is that pickleball? I mean, lower. It's just. It doesn't make any sense. So just understand that, you know, we've done a lot. I've been a part of the club for a while now, and it is the identity of this town. And not to say that pickleball is not important and not valuable, but and that venue, I really feel like you all should be protecting some of the great things about this town, and that's one of them. Those tennis courts are from 1895. They were here long before Tim was here, actually, 1895. Before the Ojai Valley Inn was here, before the Lavender Festival, before the yoga retreats, before the music festival, the Ojai Valley Tennis Club was here, and the tennis tournament. So that really is hallowed ground. That should be off limits. That's what you should be saying. Hey, that's off limits, but we're going to help you to find something else. I don't feel like we should give anybody lights or they need to go find it and make it, create it. And I think that that's fair to ask of that group, and we'd love to help. But I do feel like we don't want this kicked around and kicked back and forth. And I just feel like this is a threat that shouldn't be a threat. And I'd like you guys to really dig into the history of that park and that tournament. And again, what we have as a club provided and given to keep that club and keep that facility so beautiful. Those are the best public courts that I've ever seen in the entire country. And I've seen a lot. And let's keep that. Let's find a place for them. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, I want to
Please, happy fingers, but no applause and no boos. We do that out of self-defense because we get more boos than applause up here. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, speaking of the history of the courts, does anyone else remember when we used to have folk dancing on the courts? I know that may come as a shock to you, but we had folk dance festivals on the tennis courts, and it was beautiful. I remember that. So that's
More
part
ideas.
of the history. That's part of the history.
Maybe at the Libby Bowl on
You
stage.
know? Yeah.
Okay, that's all the cards I have. Do I have a motion
I have a
to
couple
refer?
questions.
Yeah, I got a couple
I think we
questions.
should bring it back and discuss it.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
And
Bill,
whenever it's
start.
appropriate. Just so that we're dealing with facts, I mean, I assume we're going to probably have to go back to planning and rec and have them discuss it.
Park and rec.
Park and rec, excuse me, obsessing tonight. Park and rec.
Steve had a heart attack. So
I know.
One more thing. For the
I know,
planning
one more, yeah.
commission.
No, we're not going to do, park and rec. When it does go back to park and rec, are there any year-round, not just opinions, but actual use statistics or booking statistics?
Sure, we can pull.
That could be shared with the Park and Rec Department?
Absolutely,
Park and Rec Commission?
we can pull those together. We do have the schedules here, and I can forward that to council, but yeah, we can pull
I
those
just think that'd
numbers
be
together.
useful information for their deliberations.
What do we have presently, just off the top of what you have?
What I have is this is what is scheduled through the Recreation Department for the tennis courts, and I'd be happy to go through that, or if I can
No.
share, okay, I'll distribute this out to council.
Well, we're looking at facilities that are used 365 days out of the year. Okay, to the benefit of the tennis tournament, I just want to recognize that you're using it for 5 days out of the year.
Well, they said more than
Don't
that.
hear me out. I'm just, and this is what I didn't want. I don't want to argue this. I just want to state what I'm hearing. So our tournament here, and no one's denying how important that tournament is to this community, but it's a 5-day event. Okay. So that's 5 days out of 365 days that those courts are being used. I don't think it hurts to understand the complete usage of that facility, because we've got to recognize, as important as everything that the tennis club has done everything that the Civic Association has done and provided, still doesn't remove the fact that these tennis courts are a public entity and they're for the community. So we can't lose sight of that. It's not to say we're going to change what's going on. It's not to say that we're going to, again, make a decision tonight. But we need to recognize what they are, and they are a public facility. That's the first thing. And the second thing that we need to look at is if every one of us had a vested interest in one part of our public facilities in this community and decided that no one else could use them, I think that we'd all be, up in arms over that thought process. So again, no decision tonight, understand that. And there's complete respect for what you do and what you've done and who you are. And I can tell you right now, we didn't have this many people at any Recreation and Park Commission meeting on this discussion. So that's a win for the community right off the bat, okay?
I have one other comment I'd like to make.
Bill?
I did not realize until this report came out that there is an existing dedicated pickleball court at Sewell Park. I know I've been one to raise the issue for the last few years, actually, about that entire facility off of Boardman, which is fairly underutilized, at least that's my opinion. And discussions between staffs at county and city about the larger issue of if we are constrained with our facilities, arrangements with the county for addressing that facility's constraint by better utilizing those facilities. I don't know what the situation is there in terms of their costs and revenue and expenses, but I think this raises a larger issue of when we're looking at expanding our park and recreation opportunities, that it seems to me we really haven't explored our possible arrangements with the county in terms of utilizing that facility more intensely. I don't know the details. I don't know what the potential for a fee for use would be there relative to the current fee for entry design. But I just think it's both between the school system that we have talked with about expanding our park and recreation program through them, as well as Sewell. I would hope that we'd go beyond what I heard at one Park and Rec Commission meeting. I watched the meeting, and this issue came up, and the response of staff was, well, to the Park and Rec Commission, well, why don't you call the county? And I'd like to see some exploration at the staff level in terms of what the options might be for this and other expansions of Park and Rec activities, both at the school system, which we're already doing, but also at Sewell.
Sure, be happy to do that. We had looked at it many years back, just
Many
in
years
terms
ago.
of just in terms of whether the county would be willing to break that off, and they were willing to do that. But of course, you take a look at their numbers, and yeah, there's some significant maintenance costs involved there. But
And
we'd be
I
happy
fully
to-
agree.
Sure.
But it's been years. I think that's the point. And for example, let's say that there was we organized a fundraising, I'm just dreaming now, for lights at Sewell and what the arrangement would be to guarantee access. I'm even thinking out of the box, for example, of if it was a city activity that people did a fee for use payment on, that would include a pass where they wouldn't have to pay for the fee for entry.
Sure.
If they were engaging in that. Something like that.
Okay.
I just want to
Okay.
put that on the table.
Ryan, do you have something?
Yeah. One thing I want to say is, now in our staff report, this says that this issue came up originally due to daylight savings. I want to make it clear. California may never come out of daylight savings. The federal government asked to approve it, but now that we've entered it, we voted to not get rid of it. So it's pending congressional approval. Who knows how that'll go. But that is something that may occur. So the hour difference may at least provide some availability for a longer time during the rest of the year where it normally wouldn't. So I want to make everybody aware of that. Two is, look, these aren't just tennis courts. It's not just Libby Park. It's not just the name Libby who founded the city. It is a venue for the Pac-12 championship. Most places don't even have this nice of public courts, but they don't have stands and facilities around them. I know not every court has the same stands behind it, but this is a venue. It is not just a public tennis area. It is a venue in itself that we are allowed to use. In other places, this would be a private tennis court that had a venue, and nobody in the public would be allowed to use it during the rest of the year. So we have the blessing of being able to access these courts for the rest of the year, but this is a high-level, big tournament that's been here forever, and if there's anything that's ever been grandfathered in with the right to be able to say, maybe I don't want something else there that could confuse the players, it's the Ojai Tennis Tournament. Let's be frank, it's the oldest chartered tournament, I believe, in the country. The other thing is Soul Park, and I will say Zadie Soul, who donated it, and the former mayor, Earl Soul, it's not Soul, it's Soul,
Sorry.
in their memory. But Soul Park, the park, not the golf course, loses a ton of money. In fact, I had a conversation with someone at the county who said, if the city of Ojai wants it, just ask. You guys figure out how to deal with it, and you can. There's a lot of underutilized space. Not that we're taking over Soul Park, but that there is plenty of space, and I would absolutely love to see it there. And if we have any jurisdiction to helping that happen, well, I think it makes sense to be able to put it somewhere else that's not in proximity. And I do respect the demonstration we had about sound. That is a difference. I mean, not everything that has a net can mix well together with everything else. But I think we ought to absolutely find a way to help, and we ought to see what we can do if there's any options. There are lots of tennis courts in town, but if tape is working and tape is a solution, then tape, in my mind, is the easiest way to deal with this, unless we're going to dedicate something. But the idea of dedicating a whole separate set of lines at a tennis venue that is as important as this is to our city, I can't agree with. And they are the nicest courts I've ever seen in public. When I was in school in Ojai, we played around at all kinds of different places, and there was never anything of it. It was always private courts or private clubs or things like that. In Ventura, they have a problem. They don't have tennis courts. There's a private tennis club. They don't have the access to everything we do, and I would hate to see us diminish that or especially disrupt the quality of the tournament itself. And I think frankly, they've raised the money and kept it together. I think we should give them the deference to be able to do that, with the understanding that we should seek other ways to make this work, and I'm hopeful that Park and Rec can do that.
Okay, and I'd like to kind of wrap this up and refer to the Parks and Recreation, let them do their job. But I would say this, and you hear me say it regularly, we're 4.3 square miles. We're a small town, and yet we try to listen to everybody regardless of where they live, and they come here to have recreation experiences because there's not a lot around the valley. We should have a Parks and Recreation District like they have in Conejo, Simi, Camarillo, where everybody gets to help pay the taxes to support the activities, and then everybody, when they come and ask to do things, they've got some, as they say, the skin in the game, no pun intended. I just think that it's not realistic for Ojai. We get requests for swimming pools, all sorts of things that we can't possibly afford to do, and put it on the backs of 7,000 people as opposed to the 35,000 that live in the valley. So for those who don't live in the city but who would really like to see something happen, I would encourage you to step forward, and we should be considering something broader than just the 4 square miles roughly that Ojai occupies.
All right, just one thought in closing.
Randy?
So, first of all, this is exactly what personally I wanted, was an opportunity for the community to come and talk. Again, no one's taking anything from anyone. But I'll tell you a couple of things that I did hear. I heard that I always forget, the Ojai Civic Association, not only do you or have they in the past done a lot of work at Libby Park, they've done a lot of things in this community. So I don't want to limit the thank you to that association based on Libby. And I also heard that if it becomes appropriate or at the appropriate time, that might be someone else that we talk to regarding helping us fund some other court in this community. For instance, I drove by today and went out here to there's an asphalt tennis court right out here. Poles are still in the ground. It's waiting to be lined and waiting to be netted.
Well, and resurfaced also.
So the reality is, yes, there's other opportunities and there's other venues. But you know that we would not have had this discussion tonight if it hadn't been brought forward. And a conjunctive use with, like that term, a conjunctive use, which we're already doing with the school board regarding recreational programming. I see no reason why we shouldn't be approaching the county on that regarding Soul Park. Looking at Matilaha, I mean, those courts need repaving and resurfacing also. So there's a lot to look at, but this expedites it. This moves that ball forward a little quicker. And I think, I'll end it with this, Mayor. The number one sport, growing activity in the United States for people over 60, you guys guess what it is?
It's pickleball.
It's not tennis, it's pickleball.
Pickleball.
It's pickleball.
Yep.
And you need to recognize that it may not be here now and it may not be here in great force, but it is coming. And I think what we need to do is recognize it, and we need to look at our Recreation and Parks program and figure out how to fund it and how to make it happen. So thank you.
Okay, if there's no objection, we will direct, well, it's already on the agenda for Parks and Recreation, and let them do their part in it, and also discuss the idea of a valley-wide recreation.
Time of the meeting.
The what?
The date and time of the meeting.
Uh,
It's on for the 2nd, 6 p.m.
May 2nd?
Next Thursday.
Okay, May 2nd, 6 p.m. here? Okay, does everyone
Sage
hear
is
that?
the- and
Everybody
Sage
at
is the
home?
chair.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We are
Okay,
now on
wonderful.
item number
Thank you,
6. Mr. City Manager, item number 6, street paving priorities.
Thank you. Annually, with the adoption of Senate Bill 1, in order for the city to receive that funding, which is very much greatly needed, as we all know and we've discussed many times, the city is really at a deficit in terms of trying to get caught up on our street and road maintenance. This certainly is a help, and without this money, we would fall even further behind. I will ask Mr. Grant to come up in a moment and answer any questions and give a brief report here. But again, what we're recommending is that council adopt a resolution that approves a list of road projects that will be eligible for SB1 funding. We do need to get that adopted and approved and off to the state by their May deadline. And approval of this would put the city in line to receive about $135,000 in funding from SB1. Mr. Grant, if you could come up and go over the details, including the changes that have been made on the paving schedule.
I have one question before
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Greg starts. Now, this list, which is showing all the things that need to be done, and we know if you move around town at all, that there's plenty that needs to be done.
Indeed, there is.
This is merely to get us qualified so we can receive the funds, or are we totally locked into this particular order? Or is this
As a
just-
reminder, Council in 2017 adopted a multi-year paving plan.
Right.
It's really based on the pavement condition index. We're going with the worst first approach.
Right. Okay,
So-
that's good.
To answer the mayor's question, it's to get them on the list of eligibility to receive funds. The issue would be, obviously, if we did not have something on this list, we would not be able to apply SB1 funding to it. It doesn't mean we wouldn't be able to undertake that with the city's own general funds.
Correct, okay, I just wanted to make that as a.
Mayor, can I follow up with your line of questioning?
Because we do have the opportunity periodically to review, and I agree that it should be done, the stuff that's in the worst condition needs to be addressed, but sometimes it's the location and the number of people that would benefit, and I still would like to see, maybe during the budget process, which is coming up very quickly, I would like to see whether we're getting ahead or falling behind based upon the amount of work we're doing, because the hurrier we go, the behinder maybe we're getting when it comes to the amount of money that's spent on this, because I see literally tens of millions of dollars worth of repairs that are still out there. So, Randy.
So, Mayor, and again, we have this thing every 2 years, this discussion. It's interesting. First to last, I've yet to see a chart that shows the complete city and every one of its streets and how they're rated. So I'd like to see that. And then the second thing is,
And as I mentioned, that's attached to this report.
Okay, and then
It's
the
too big to attach, so it's on the website.
okay, so we need that. And then the
It's
second
so available on
thing,
the website.
We'll make sure to email you the file.
right. Yeah, I get lost on that response. Okay?
It's impossible to attach.
I'm just telling you, I get lost in that response. The response might be, that I'll get with the city manager and we'll get it to you, Mr. Haney. That's the response I want to hear. Okay? The second thing is,
We already heard that request and we
great.
included it in
So
the
the
report.
second thing that I'd like to cover is, when were the streets done the last time? So in other words, in your index, if some street has been done 5 years ago, and that street comes up for repair in this cycle or the next cycle, I'd like to know why that was done before a street that hasn't been done for 20 years or 25 years. So can we accommodate that some way?
Okay, Greg, is that kind of information on the website? I'm like Randy, though, I get a little get lost on that. But there's got to be some place that shows the inventory of streets, the condition of the pavement, and the sequence or the kind of the timeline on when the last time overlay or slurry seal or whatever was done. Is that available on that?
So in trying to address that, because I believe Councilman Haney brought this up before the report was prepared, we attached, for one thing, this is kind of showing the more recent efforts towards paving in the past 10 years that we've had. So that's in the attachment. You can read pretty well 11 by 17. The map that has the full history of all of the paving as well as the pavement condition indexes is way too detailed to see. It's a 2 by 3 foot, and even then it's very difficult to read.
Yeah.
That one is what we've referred to in the report. It's on the website, and you can read it.
That's where you go
certainly
for
forward
that.
it to
Okay.
council people as well.
Okay, good. Okay, so this is a process that it's a ritual we go through periodically to qualify so that they will send us the money so we can do some of the work and the rest of it's on our back, right?
Exactly.
Okay, Bill?
Do we have a schedule from the Casitas Municipal Water District yet in terms of their project for their replacement water line?
They are a new engineering group, and Juliana Arana is the new manager of that group, and she has just developing that as part of the bonding they have. So they've got the first phase, and they're trying to push ahead of our scheduling program, but obviously some of these weren't
We don't
gonna
know
work.
yet.
They're actively in it, but they don't have beyond the first 2 years right now.
What's scheduled in the first 2 years?
The conflicts I pointed out right here.
So that means they're not planning on putting the new pipe in for 2 years?
They're within 2 years. They plan
Within
to put
2
those in.
years.
Yes.
Yeah, what Mr. Grant has proposed here is certain streets that we took out so that we were not paving those prior to the water replacement lines.
So they advance out to the next phasing cycle in 2 years.
Okay, now, on that point, I believe the gas company, I heard, as part of the Ojai Avenue work that they've been doing, they are required to pay for that resurfacing at some point. Is that true or not true?
That's correct.
All right. Will that be done before or after the Casitas Municipal Water District puts their water line in? That's my next question.
You mean on the state highway?
Well, keep in mind that they're not required to go curb to curb. They're going to required to repair the trenching they've done.
Wait, let's talk about that again. They are working more than curb to curb in terms of tearing up the surface. They're not required to repave the entire surface that they've been working on?
I don't believe so. I'm in meetings with Caltrans, and they plan to pave the entire street in 2 years, immediately after the ATP.
Yeah, they won't be required to do the entire overlay. They have to.
So the gas companies, what is gas company paying for?
They'll pay for the repairing of the trenching they're doing.
Wherever they've exposed?
Yes.
Okay. And then if we do the ATP grant, because we know there's a lot of reasons to get going with that, is the Casitas District going to come in after that?
No. No, their project is
Because that's not-
prioritized right now to be done. They're doing that section from Montgomery out to Gridley, another section from Bristol. I think
Because they also have an Ojai Avenue line that they have to put in, right?
Right.
A
Portions
state
of
highway
it.
line. And when they put in their line, what's their responsibility in terms of resurfacing?
If it's within a 5-year moratorium, they'll have to go, we can require a curb-to-curb replacement. So we have the ability to do that if it's within the 5 years of the original paving. So typically, they try to get ahead of the paving or wait till down the road and do it afterwards.
Is there a way to coordinate with them where basically, all right, you have this responsibility, or the gas company, you have the responsibility for repaving for the work you do. We've got the money to, or the Caltrans, or us, if it's Grand, has the money to resurface everything. We'll relieve you of the opportunity of doing it yourself if you give us the compensation for what you would have paid anyway to help us do the whole thing.
It would be difficult to coordinate. You're saying as soon as the trenching is done, we leave some kind of temporary asphalt in there, and then they contribute that money towards our paving project?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Which is what we did on Mallory, you might recall.
Yes.
Right. So it would be difficult to coordinate. That was on a very quiet street, carefully coordinated. And this one, it'd be difficult.
Well, not to throw a monkey wrench, we're also talking about state highway too, so.
Well,
Right.
but Grand is not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm talking about Grand and Caltrans.
I apologize.
Whether either Caltrans or us could work out that kind of arrangement with either the gas company or Casitas.
If they could contribute. I'll talk to them about Grand to see if there's a possibility to do that. Grand is down the road on the overlay priority list. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, one thing we got to make sure is that if Casitas is on a different timeline, that they are not spending, when they say they're going to spend their money, they're really spending the Community Facilities District money to do that repair. So ultimately, anything additional it costs them that's not coordinated, it may seem like it's coming from Casitas, but it's really coming out of the pockets of the same people in Ojai. So we got to make sure that anything we can do to keep that lower, if that works and it costs the same, I'm all for it, Bill. If it doesn't, if they're within that 5-year moratorium and they decide to do it, they might say it because it's all our money they're spending. So we got to make sure they don't do that.
Is the water main in Ojai Avenue between, what is it?
It's
Gridley down
Bristol
to?
and Gridley.
Yeah, Montgomery to Gridley, and then the other section was around, it was Gridley out, I think, towards the Topo.
Well, I can tell you, there's been a plan on the books that was approved at the Public Utility Commission not long ago that was a Bristol to Gridley plan. And in consulting with Casitas,
highway?
yeah, and that's all down Ojai Avenue. And then that was what was approved, and that's what Golden State felt like they needed to do. And Casitas, in discussions with them, said they ultimately want to do the same thing and see the same problem. That includes the main line in front of the theater. That was the one that.
Right, my question, Greg, is have we heard from Casitas when that work will be done and how that coordinates with Caltrans, so we don't have a brand-new overlay on the main street of town and then end up chopping into it?
Yes, they're in the middle of design right now. They're trying to get it done this fall.
And the sense is they'll be able to coordinate putting the line in first before Caltrans does the next overlay?
Right, it's about 2 years out, but I'll check in that, appreciate that comment. I'll check to see what happened in Montgomery up to Bristol.
Mayor, can I go back to Greg, can I go back to the gas line discussion? Mm-hmm. So the gas line is being installed right now, that is being repaired right now,
Mm-hmm.
that's temporary?
The pavement that's put in, I haven't seen it, but generally, oftentimes there's a quick cold patch put in, and then they go with a permanent hot patch.
No, they went to
afterwards.
permanent hot patch.
They've got hot in there? So I'm
And
pretty
they're
sure that's
backfilling
permanent,
with
but I'll check.
concrete in those trenches too. They're not just backfilling dirt, they're backfilling concrete. They're filling concrete in those trenches.
Same as our requirement.
Probably a
to do
slurry, it's probably a
backfill.
slurry patch.
Right.
But more importantly is, I think what you might want to do is take a drive, because we now have the Ojai whoop-de-doos. So if anyone rides dirt bikes, you always hit a whoop-de-doo without your front tire touching the ground.
A whoop-de-doo is what?
Whoop-de-doo are nice little ripples in your street.
In the
your
pavement?
bumps. Yeah, so now I have an elevated truck, but when I'm driving, it has a tendency to
Yeah.
bobble my head.
Give you a little insight as to what's it.
So,
Councilman Haney's
so all I'm saying, I think
problems
someone
are.
needs to drive it and actually take a look at their patch and recognize that it may not be a quality patch. If that's what we're gonna live with for 2 years, waiting for the true patch to take place, that may not be acceptable.
It's out of our realm, but I'll be glad to use our influence and check on it, as well as, I guess one of the benefits of streets that are beat up is that it's good traffic calming. I know whenever we pave a street, the first complaint we get is everybody's speeding again, you know?
It's bad for riding your
No,
bike.
it's great. We have great traffic calming going on Ojai Avenue right now.
Yes.
Just to be clear, this is not approving a
very calm.
CIP program. This is just a eligible list for the.
That's correct.
To get the
state-
Well, I should revise that, actually. We're in design on the approved multi-year plan that council approved back in 2017.
Right, but approving this tonight does not approve the CIP for the next fiscal year.
That's correct.
Right. But we are hoping you stick with that multi-year plan, because we've
But
designed.
that's still a decision distinct from this decision.
Right.
Right.
I just want to be clear.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Voting yes on this is not voting for the CIP in the next fiscal year.
I have one more comment, Mayor. And Greg, you know, you see how reactive I can be. My response to you should have been, Greg, is there any way that you and I can meet at your office and pull up online the questions that I have and go over it together?
I'm sorry,
Can we do that?
absolutely, we can do
No,
that.
I should have said that
Yes.
to you. Can we do that?
Okay. Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely, yes.
You need a translator, Randy. The only thing I will say is do not let Casitas screw around with this. I've been talking with them for 5 years about coordinating these things with the city, and every time I talk to them, it seems like it's nebulous, ambiguous. It's never clear. I know they haven't put the pen to paper yet, but they also promised us this project, all of their main pipeline replacement would have been done by now under their original plan.
Exactly.
And they have a tendency to delay, and there can be some real problems. We just, whatever it's going to take, and if it ends up being that you hit a brick wall or have a problem, please let us know, because I'll do whatever I can. We've got to make sure that this gets coordinated, because we can do everything we can, and they could screw it up, and I just don't want to see it happen. We got to get this main line replaced.
It's important because this is facilities district money, not Casitas Municipal Water District
Yeah,
money.
and if they start spending our CFD money that we raised if they start blowing through costs extra because of their lack of coordination, whether that's through the city or just them, we will, please inform us, because I want to make sure.
Just a reminder, we are, they have quite a bit of turnovers, everybody knows recently, but that new engineering department manager has been very good.
Yeah, and I
Yes, they have.
coordinating
They've
with-
been excellent.
I agree.
In fact, Mayor, maybe as part of this discussion about this main line, maybe we need to have the city manager contact Casitas and maybe have Mike, their new general manager, come and speak to us and talk to actually how much money's left in our fund, which I've heard it's down to about $12 million. And then the second thing is actually discuss about this timeline and give us their thoughts on it.
Yeah, maybe just ask for an audit or tell us what's left and then decide
Yes.
whether we want to.
Well, we can still do that to the city manager, yes?
Yeah, and I think it would be a very good idea as this moves forward to one, get updates on the CFD at any time we can, but two, have them, or at least request. If they don't want to, that's fine, but at least we're asking them to come in
Yes.
and talk to us directly for 5 minutes, whatever it is, at our council meetings, so that we can ensure that these things are coordinated correctly.
What they've spent so
Not
far.
that you're not doing it, just because I want to make sure that we're talking directly to somebody, because I just don't have a ton of faith that they're going to make sure that because we got a lot of things going on with these roads. I don't want to see anything get slipped through the cracks.
Maybe, Ryan, you and I should pay a call on Casitas and talk with their staff as opposed. I guess I have a little reluctance, we are a political jurisdiction, so is the water district, and for us to have command performances of other districts to come before us and explain, I think we got to be a little careful on that.
I think the ask is appropriate, but more important is, we have a representative that sits on that board, Russ Baggerly. Russ
That would be the person.
Russ should be coming here and having that dialogue.
And I'm going
with
to say this: you're absolutely correct, and the sovereignty of the Casitas district is not a question. However, 95% of the community facilities district resides in the city of Ojai. The city of Ojai is the one that bankrolled getting rid of Golden State Water, is the one that took care of, well, I shouldn't say it, they weren't the one who bankrolled, it's the citizens who ultimately bankrolled getting rid of Golden State Water.
Right.
And that is a little bit different. They are managing the community facilities district that is mostly under our jurisdiction, but is their management. So when it comes to issues with that, and being that I am personally, I personally put my neck out on the line to make sure we would keep an eye on this, I want to make sure from this position we're doing everything we can. And I think you get the message clear, Greg, but if I can help in any way, and if the mayor and I need to go down there and talk to anybody, we're happy to do.
Okay, great. Do I need a motion here now to approve this so we can
Yes,
get the SB?
yes, the recommendation would be to approve the resolution.
Move to approve the
Motion
resolution.
Seconded.
Okay, moved and seconded. Hearing.
Because it's money, we gotta vote.
Do we need a vote, a roll call?
Yeah, because it's a
Money?
financial request to the state.
Okay, please call the roll. Thank you, Randy.
Mayor Johnston,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina,
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz,
Yes.
Councilmember Haney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick.
Yes.
Okay, our next item is item number 7, and this is really sent back to us as information. Mayor Pro Tem and I will be meeting to go over the report. I want to thank the staff for the quick turnaround time and response, and we do have a couple of cards, I
know
think,
ATN wants to speak.
from our...
ATN, I thought for sure you were going to be here about tennis.
I'm against
I had a feeling.
Rec department would be a great spot for that.
Fair enough. Okay, Etienne? Come on. I assume you're not against this, what's on here.
I'm
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
not
okay,
against
yeah,
this.
right,
Thank you
okay.
for that, and I appreciate where we've come so far, this report. I want to thank you for this report, the work that the city's done on this. I don't know if everyone's gotten a chance to look at it. There was a few points that I would like to weigh in on, just with some of the bullet points, 7.4, about the ordinance encompassing all multi-unit.
Where are you?
Page 7-4?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm weighing in on all. I do think there's some really nice language in here about nuisance and trespassing, so that definitely applies there. With secondhand smoke being something that is trespassing into spaces. And then on the bullet point about if 100% prohibition, I believe that the current ordinance already talks about distances away from structures, and I also think that the Edison Electric Company now has their concerns with fire safety and smoking about certain distances away. And then the last point I say on that too is that just noticing how people who do smoke, a lot of them already don't smoke inside. There are outliers who are causing problems, but a lot of people do already just go to an outside area because if they do smoke, they do have the decency to at least walk out to those areas. So in my opinion, I think that's already happening. And then the next topic about the same differentiating rules for the following activities. I think the city of Moore Park did an amazing job with what they did.
Where are you now?
Just following these bullet points down on
Oh,
the
okay.
same. The city of Moore Park did it. You can look at that example. I think they nailed it on that. And then the phasing in of time, I hope there's certainly no grandfathering in of this, because as you know, it's really important for us that this hopefully happens soon. And at this point, there's literally the chance to save lives. It can get that extreme, and without being dramatic about that, I think we know the science behind this and the trends that all cities are seeing. And then lastly, just enforcement. I think there's already a lot of great points that have been made about fines, and I do hope that property managers should definitely be involved on these, and that this is things that are breaches of contracts once this goes into effect. And then I also hope that in terms of now the other solutions that are available, that accompanied with this, that the city does establish that the secondhand smoke is a nuisance or trespassing, and that will also help residents protect themselves from secondhand smoke. And the last part of this is that there's a case study that Belmont did, and their staff eventually acknowledged that smoking is not a right, and that smokers are not a protected class of persons. Therefore, smoking is not an activity which people have a right to engage in locations where other people might be subject to secondhand smoke. So it's definitely stands to reason that you shouldn't be allowed to slowly poison your neighbors.
Mayor, is that a Belmont rule, or is that what recognizes that?
So the Belmont staff, there was a case study. Belmont is one of the cities that enacted this ordinance prohibiting smoking in multi-units and apartments housing. And their staff gave way to the public opinion. It just states here that it acknowledges that smoking is not a right. There's nothing that says you have a constitutional right to smoke, and that smokers are not a protected class of persons.
That was a finding of a group, but not a court decision, is that what you're
With the
saying?
staff.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
staff.
okay.
Yeah.
Not all rights are from the
That's,
Constitution.
I was gonna say,
Fair
that's,
enough, yeah.
that's why I wanted to clarify that.
Right.
Is that a Belmont ruling, or is that a state recognized or a federal recognized law?
I think it was the public opinion
Yeah.
that led them to that.
Yeah, it was like in a resolution, whereas we
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
that, and that's their opinion, anybody can sue under it, but, okay.
And again,
Great.
thank you for.
And again, understand this is going to go to a subcommittee. They're going to come back. It's going to get voted on again.
So I
Okay.
appreciate it.
We'll see you again.
Great.
Thank you.
Ramrod this one? You should even join us and.
I'm
maybe
sorry,
gonna see
just
what
one
we
last,
come up-
I know I ran out of time, I'm very sorry. There is, the definition of substandard housing can get included here. I think you know the definition of substandard housing, but I'll just try to quickly say it, is that it is not housing that is old or outdated. It is housing that poses a risk to the health and physical well-being of its occupants, neighbors, and visitors. Substandard housing brings increased risk of disease and decreased mental health to the families and individuals who live there. And third-hand smoke is a relatively new term, which is causing substandard housing. So I think that's an important point to also think about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. That's the only card I have on that. So if there is no further discussion, Susan and I will take that under advisement and try to come back with something as quickly as we
I
can.
think we should buy ashtrays for them for their subcommittee work.
Can you find
The
it?
tw- the
Do they have
2019
ashtrays anymore?
Tobacco subcommittee ashtray.
So we move it to the subcommittee.
Yeah, okay. So we'll try to work with the city attorney and have something back to you.
We can do
Okay.
it.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to number, oh no, we did 8 already. Okay,
Yeah.
great, geez, we're ready to fly.
Yeah.
Wow. You were concerned we weren't gonna
Should
make
have a
the time
pickleball
limit.
game, we got plenty of time.
Yeah,
Yeah, we could have talked about pickleball more.
We still had plenty of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we can invite
Hit them balls around a little longer there.
Tell them to bring a beanbag gun and shoot at us, okay. We are,
Look at someone bring a ball.
Remember American Gladiators? Remember the big 100-mile-an-hour tennis ball?
okay, council member reports.
Real quick, May 20th, VCTC is coming to town. We'll be at Sarasota Rec Center for an all-day meeting, open to the public.
May 20th, right? Is that what you
Yes.
said? Yeah, I want to go.
In fact, I actually sent that letter to
Tina.
Tina to let her know that it might be an opportunity for her and her group to come and
Yeah.
actually speak. Caltrans rep will be there. Ventura County Transportation Commission will be there, all bodies, the majority of them. It's a good opportunity to speak to some road conditions and problems that we have in the community.
Where did you say it was held?
It'll be at Sarasota, I believe.
And
Rosodi
Is
or
that right?
Seoul?
Sarasota.
Boyd?
I'm not
Boyd?
familiar. I'm not sure.
Okay.
'Cause for-
It's
news to me.
It's a meeting coming to you soon.
All right. We'll get the we'll get the
I
details.
was gonna say, it's
taken out.
their new complex is the one behind where,
Oh, that's Gold Coast.
Gold Coast, okay, I wasn't sure, thank you.
So, and that will be the next thing coming online is Gold Coast Transportation. Paul was on that commission for forever. And it's coming online this year.
Yeah, if
It's a
you-
beautiful facility.
Yeah, if you happen to be behind where
Costco?
Costco
Behind
is,
Costco.
yeah, there's this,
Yeah.
you can see it, it's in the middle of construction, it's unbelievable, it looks amazing.
I think it is coming to Soul Park, but I'll verify
Full
that and
Park
get that to council.
has a location?
Yeah,
They have a banquet
banquet room there, or,
Yeah.
At
Not
the
the
golf
park,
course.
the golf course.
At the golf course.
Oh,
Yes.
the golf?
Or Rotary
Yes.
meet.
Oh, there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
okay,
was
let's
thinking
let's
park.
try to rein this back in. Okay, Ryan, it's your turn.
I don't think I have anything specific. I will say,
not
as
required.
part of our ongoing efforts to curb the problems on Creek Road, I was meeting with Jamie, the CEO of the chamber, and I asked him for if he would include, and I think he's either done it or he's working on, but he was going to include a statement for visitors saying, if you are advised to go down Creek Road, you may want to consider not doing it. So I think that since we're not going to get anything, I'm still not sure about Waze and Google and all that. I never heard anything back, but if the answer to that's no, then the next best thing we can do is in all these little ways. And I thought one of the ideas Tina had about including it in temporary use permits was a good idea. So I think, we just got to try and get active to tell people if there's no better way, say, hey, stay off there. There's no point.
Well, could we add to that statement, and I could get together with Jamie, because we should say Creek Road is a residential, rural street. It's, we should say something so that people don't know that they shouldn't go speeding through there.
Right, and we should also recognize what the sheriff's department, I think, concluded on the highway patrol, that a substantial number, the greater number of people that have been warned to slow down live here.
Yeah.
It's commuter traffic.
Absolutely.
So, okay, very good, thanks.
That's
And
it. Thank you.
I have one thing I just wanted to bring up. It was been brought to my attention, everybody got their notice from the fire department. They did some really nice work here on telling people, harden your homes and harden the community. So we need to be working on that through our budget as well as individually. But it occurred to me, this is our home away from home. This is a treasured building. And I was wandering around the outside, and because I'm trying to do something about the the breathing holes or the air holes for the old conventional foundation that we have here. And the screens on that, or like at my house, need to be attended to. So I would like to, with the support of the council, to ask the staff to have the fire department do a fire safety inspection and give us either a bill of health or some friendly advice on what we might do, including in the attic, because there was a tour very recently of City Hall as part of the fundraiser for, ironically, was the museum. And again, I say, both for the art as well as the treasure of this building, it was built a long time ago, and the ventilation in the attic and the way this is constructed fits right into some of the warnings that are here in the fire protection. So I think we ought to have that as part of our budget discussion.
I agree. That was my first time in the attic, and it was interesting.
Yeah, a little scary.
I haven't been in the basement yet, so.
Right. So it goes both ways, and all the stuff that we're talking to the public
Any
about.
skeletons up there?
We need to start with ourselves, okay? So,
I agree.
Sousa, it's your turn.
Ojai Earth Day was a success.
Very successful.
Mayor gave a great speech.
Did I?
You did.
I jabbered.
Yeah.
Thank you for sitting and being my audience.
Yeah. It is, the video, there'll be a video out in a few more days, for those of you that missed it. And what was remarkable is that it was drizzling and raining, and not raining hard, but drizzling. And it got colder and colder. You can tell by the photographs, because toward the end, people had on coats and everything, but still people had a wonderful time. It was very well attended.
had a wonderful time.
Better,
Oh, good, I'm
Better than
glad.
being too hot.
Yeah, it was good, yeah.
There was a
Since I rode my new electric bike down there.
Oh, yes, I'm so excited that you have an electric
Right.
bike.
Between,
I had to make sure I told you.
Between Earth Day and 420, we had an influx
Yes.
of people on Saturday.
Yes, we
It was
did.
pretty, and I also wanted to say that I really appreciated, I see Mr. Vega he was in the back there, he's gone, but he helped Public Works be very responsive to the requests of children to attend to the park in terms of
good.
sand and fixing the mister. And it was well appreciated, just not by my granddaughters, but by many other children that were there in the park that day.
Oh, good.
So that was very, very appreciated.
I have a question on the stuff that happened, you were saying and Jeff talked about it, the stuff that happened down on Bryant, the 420 celebration. Was that a temporary, was that
TVP, I
okay,
believe.
because I didn't know when that came through.
Well, they're allowed to do up to 4 special events per year.
Okay, and that was just part of
So-
that. The other thing I'd suggest is that Bryant is so bad with parking, and the dispensaries are apparently there because there's ample parking, but nobody, I don't think, parks in those parking lots. They'll park on the street, and it's just
Okay.
this rounded corner of where my office used to be down there, there's nobody there, but whenever there was a car down there, you'd always almost hit it. And it's rounded, so you can't see anything when you're coming around. If they're going to have ample parking, we should have something that says people have to park in the parking lots.
Agreed.
Sit out on the street.
Agreed. Okay.
And that would be much easier.
And I have one other short report I want to mention.
Before we go with that, Bill, my understanding from this was a jointly sponsored program at Earth Day. It was very successful between us and the Green Coalition, but I was told that there were charges to set up this year.
Well, they were last year, too.
Yeah, right, okay. And did those come through the city?
No, the Green Coalition wrote the check.
No, I'm talking about the exhibitors. I went to the Sierra Club booth looking for Jim Hines, and the lady who was there said, "Oh, this year we had to pay for our spot."
Huh.
And I had not heard that before. I don't know,
We don't,
They paid, everybody pays.
But who are they paying? It's
They
a,
paid, okay,
not the city.
no, the check goes to the Green Coalition to cover the expenses.
Okay, but have we ever formalized any of that kind of thing? I mean, it just seems to me, it's a city park, and we have an event, and it's a very nice, but if
Right.
we are charging, as somebody observed at one point, they used to have this at a school or something, and there were no charges. I'm not saying it's good or bad, because it was a very nice event, but it does seem like we have fees for the use of everything else, and for us to have a jointly sponsored activity where money is changing hands or being charged, it seems like there should be some understanding.
Especially the Green Coalition, don't we provide a
Wait,
lot
wait,
of funding?
hang on a second, I'm on the committee, okay?
You may be, so you
So
don't
I can-
confess to anything
no,
because you're on camera.
No, it's not, I know that I'm sure they can document the expense, there's no profit made, okay? All the,
saying that.
all the fees are nominal, and if someone cannot, if it's a hardship, there are free, some of the spaces are free.
Right, but this,
or there's- or-
Susan, what I am saying, I'm not arguing about that
Yeah.
part. I'm merely bringing up the point that that is a public facility, and we are a co-sponsor, and I don't know of any agreements that have been worked out for money to be paid by people to another agency, in this case, the Green Coalition, and what happens to the money, or any of that. I'm just saying it's just not formalized, and it does seem like a pretty
Mayor-
loose arrangement.
Mayor, this is what I'm hearing, the ask is, does the Green Coalition have the right to utilize that facility and then charge for the use of it if we have given it to them for free?
No,
Is that legal?
it's not
I'm-
free.
I-
We pay for it. We pay for it.
Oh, the Green Coalition pays
Yes,
to
we
use
pay
the.
all the normal fees. We pay like $600. There's some part of that is refunded, but we're treated just like any other.
So what is the joint sponsorship of the city? If we're
Well,
charging the Green Coalition, sounds like we're
My
not.
understanding is that the city supports the event, they approve of it, they support the Green Coalition. I think the support is an acknowledgement. It's an
think that's accurate.
acknowledgement that the city doesn't donate, we have, there's.
No, I understand that. I just.
Right.
Can I
The
get a
the image to the people, Susan, let me finish so that you will understand what my concern is. I'm not saying I'm right, but the people who come there, when they see that it is a joint venture between us and the Green Coalition, and they are being charged to be there, they think the city is doing that. Now, what you're saying is in effect, we have sublet the park just like we do for concerts and other things, and that the Green Coalition is handling it. So the city is just like anybody else that was there, including Sierra Club and Casitas and everybody else who endorsed the program and showed up and put a program on. We're leaving the impression that we're somehow behind in organizing the thing, and we aren't. It's the Green Coalition is doing it with our cooperation.
This is the first I've
Nobody
ever
wants to
heard of
change
this,
No,
this
just wanna
being
make
an
sure.
issue.
Paperwork's cleaned up.
This year, there are so many hundreds of hours of work involved. I know, because last year, it was my idea to put it in the park, to get the permits and all that. And this year, we hired a coordinator who we paid her for 1 month, she worked 3 months, and she knew that she'd be a full-time volunteer. So we virtually had, she was slightly subsidized, $1,000, something like that. And the whole thing is run by countless volunteers. It takes a huge amount of coordination and planning. We started in January, we had bi-weekly
I
meetings.
understand, but you
Yeah.
seem to be missing my
No,
point
the point is, I think
altogether.
I think once people write the check to the Ojai Valley Green Coalition, don't they understand that's where the money goes?
Well, everybody was announcing that the city of Ojai and the Green Coalition were putting it on, and that's when it came to
Maybe
me.
because I'm there.
Well, I was there too, and I was catching the questions of why do we paying and where's the money going type of thing. And I said, I have no idea, because we've never ever discussed it. And tonight's not the night to do it. I just wanted to raise that point along with
Okay.
Earth Day, that when we sublet the place to someone else, there should be, normally we have some kind of an agreement like with Sterling, which is fine. We can do it.
Susan, what I'm hearing is in the future, maybe they need to come in and ask for a waiver. But aside from that, Green Coalition asking for a waiver for use of the facility if we're doing something as a conjunctive use. Okay, so I had one other question though.
It is making it more.
I just want to, I want to
I'm on
clarify
your
something.
side now. If
I'd
he's
like
gonna be
to, I'd like
giving
to
more money
clarify
away.
some verbiage.
Uh-huh.
Okay? Are you a liaison to this group, or are you on their board, or?
I'm not on their board.
I need to
I'm not a
understand-
vote-
yeah.
I'm not a voting member. I'm the city liaison to the Ojai Valley Green Coalition, is my understanding. And but my involvement with the Earth Day is separate, is something that, you know, I would be involved with if I was a city council member or not. I'm part
I'm
of
just
the plan.
asking, is there any inherent conflict behind any council person sitting on a commission or sitting on a group like Green Coalition or like Earth Day or like, is there any conflict in that?
Not to make it too lawyerly, but the answer does depend, and I'll give a brief explanation. If the individual council member does not have any personal financial benefit from any of the transactions at issue, in other words, you're not an employee of the nonprofit that you're on the board of, say, if there's no personal financial benefit, then you're out of the Political Reform Act. Then you're only looking at Government Code Section 1090, which prohibits a government official of any stripe being on both sides of a contract. There's an exception, though, if the second side of the contract is a nonprofit on which you sit on the board or are otherwise involved with, provided, again, you don't have any personal financial benefit from it. So assuming those caveats are true, it's not a direct financial conflict, then it becomes a more of a policy choice in terms of where the council wishes to.
So I guess to clarify that just one step further, and then Mayor, I'll let us all go. Again, because I think this is an important discussion, is, so for instance, if I sit on let's take Complete Streets. If I sit on that committee as a councilman, am I exerting undue pressure on that committee to make decisions based on me and my opinion in that group? Whether it's financial or not?
Yeah, if there's no financial conflicts, because Complete Streets doesn't have the power to spend any money. They're technically a subcommittee of the Planning Commission that makes recommendations to the Planning Commission, who makes recommendations to the council. I realize in practice they have asserted a higher role for themselves, but it wouldn't legally be undue influence. It's more of a political question.
Okay.
And I might suggest, as a close on that item, which of course isn't on your agenda tonight, that the council could revisit the relationship between the city and the Ojai Valley Green Coalition as part of the upcoming budget cycle, in which you're looking at the city sponsorship of the Green Coalition, and you could look at the issues related to the Green Coalition's programs.
Right.
May I say something else about this? We do have the standard contract, you know, with the city. There is a contract. I think it's 6 pages.
Yeah, there's an agreement in place that governs the sponsorship by the city of the organization as a whole. I don't believe it has specific reference to Earth Day, although I'll defer to Mr. McClary on that.
It's a standard contract for using the park.
Okay, I'm just raising the point, and I think they'll have the city manager's office look into the thing just to see if anything more needs to be formalized, because it's a bit of a surprise when you're out on the street and you're told that you're the sponsor of it, and then suddenly you have all these other entanglements and think, well, there may be a good answer, I just didn't have it. So, okay, Bill, you've been very patient there.
Very quiet.
Yes, right.
Isn't this the time that we make
Give you
announcements?
extra credit, but if we don't leave here by 10, you lose all your
We're
credit.
still making announcements,
Can I reclaim my
right?
time?
But I never got to finish.
You haven't,
I
I
never
thought
got
you
to-
reported on the Earth Day. Did you have
Yeah,
something
but
more?
I can't help it, that went on. Are you going to report on the bike rodeo? Okay, I don't have to do that. And then just to remind you that the Medical Cannabis Conference is Saturday, May 4th. And that's all I have for now.
Ojai
Yeah.
Women's Center.
At the Ojai Women's Center.
Okay.
Yeah.
Real quickly, I've had recent, and this is just council member report, we're not to future agenda items yet. I have had some very interesting discussions with a man by the name of Bill Kelly, who is the
You know
chief.
him?
Yes, yeah. He's the chief building official in Marin County.
Yeah.
And Art Ludwig, and they have
Yeah.
provided me information about adoption of alternative building methods code sections over and above state code, both in Ventura County and Marin County and other counties. I'd like a venue to provide this information, and it seems to me, to start looking at this information. It seemed to me that a possible venue for that might be a presentation to the Building Appeals Board, since it's a matter of building code issues for them to look at. And there's also the issue with the Building Appeals Board we kind of had this whole fire map thing where it was deferred until CAL FIRE could come back, and now CAL FIRE says they're not coming back. So we have a couple issues there that I thought it might be an appropriate venue to have a BAB meeting, to present the information and discuss it. And I wonder what the rest of the council thought of that.
I'll weigh in quickly. I think the fire map should go back to BAB as soon as possible. I think the public should be, not people go to the BAB, not people maybe even watch it. So I think the alternative building issue, I think should be come here and let someone do a 15-minute presentation on it.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
That's fine.
Well, I know our.
I just thought I didn't want to waste council time until, a group had looked at it.
Ray Powers hosted that event, right?
Right, yeah, I was on the panel, I have a copy of the ordinance. I'm not sure where that all goes, but
Well-
yeah, having a presentation, we did it one night here before on several alternative.
Yeah, I hadn't seen the actual, I had,
Discussed it when we were talking about ADUs.
I hadn't seen the actual code that had been adopted by Marin County until recently.
Well, now, would this be for only, now, is this, if you're, I mean, you can't really remodel a house with these alternative things, or can
Well, I don't
you?
want to deliberate it down.
Well, the
I
only
just,
thing I'm gonna say is that we had, I mean, based on the numbers we were looking at last time, we had 2 new house constructions in the city of Ojai. 2 in a year. I mean, how much bang are we getting for the buck on
We'd
this
be
thing?
looking at ADUs, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, if that's the pleasure of the council, then maybe we have a BAB meeting, update look at the fire map issue, and then come back to council with information.
Didn't the BAB conclude that and send it to us, and it came to us a year ago, April, and we didn't really do anything with it? Is there any reason, if we want to pursue it, to bring it back here and
Well, we
have the
deferred
public discussion?
pending the because CAL FIRE coming back, and CAL FIRE decided they're not coming back.
Right, so now that they're not coming back, I mean, the work was still done by BAB, they're done, they're just wondering why we haven't weighed in, if we
Maybe
want to.
what we want to agendize it and bring it back to the council.
Sort of a pickleball kind of a discussion, maybe, you know?
Well, Mayor, I was trying to key off of your desire to have the commissions and boards do things rather than this council
Well, this
first.
really isn't that, they've done it. They're sitting around, I've had contact with them several times saying, okay, what's next? And I had to say, well, gee, we already did have it at council, and the council kind of, I don't know, just.
Well, I brought it up because I'm liaison to the BAB this quarter, but if we want to just bring it back to council, then that's fine. I just
It
was
seems
trying
like
to
it's
look
kind
at
of
the efficient
more
way to
busy
deal it.
work. They've done a good job of, and if everybody comes here and, if we want to go ahead with it, you know, the key questions.
Oh, I do.
The question is what is the benefit versus what is the risk?
Absolutely.
And according to some of the experts, one who is near and dear to us, who's in the insurance business, they say the insurance industry is well ahead of the rest of us.
Well, that's one opinion.
Yeah, right, exactly. But having a public discussion, we might find out real fast what the other opinions
That's
are.
my point, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, like I said, these are, I was just kind of do a double whammy there in terms of having some deliberation by one of our advisory boards. But if we want to just do it at council level, then fine.
If they want to talk about the,
Alternative building methods.
The alternative
What
business-
Marin
building.
County's done, what Ventura County's done.
Ventura County's done it, and you need 300 acres.
Well, the point, Mayor, is that's part of the discussion, is whether the same concept can be scaled,
Right, yeah,
to
to-
different jurisdictions.
Right.
And is there a role there in terms of affordable housing, and fire safety as well?
Okay.
And that's what I just thought it might be a good venue to start the discussion with.
Yeah, as an old home builder, I can assure you that it's not a viable alternative for affordable housing, but it may be an alternative that somebody would want to pursue and spend the money to do it.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I would say that belongs before the BAB.
Okay, well then why we
You know,
have.
because they're going to have to do some detailed discussion.
Sure.
Whereas the other one, I think we got to just
Okay,
decide
so
whether we
maybe-
want to tackle
Maybe we
it.
give it to BAB and let them digest it and then spit
Okay.
something back at us.
On the dot, okay. Anyway, that's my report.
Okay, you got a homework assignment.
Yeah, I have a homework assignment, then I have a future agenda item and a city manager question when we get.
So yeah, we'll coordinate a BAB meeting to take up that alternative building methods, and we'll get scheduled to bring back to council the fire map.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay. Council agenda?
Yes, I have one.
Okay, and I
Okay,
have,
you got one?
I just have I just have a request for a proposal that, Drown Avenue, the ASUS has been in contact with them too, but the citizens on Drown think that we have, an excessive speeding issue there. And so one of their thoughts is that we put temporary speed humps, not bumps, humps. And what I'd like to do is just get an ask on what those might cost. And I think that's a real simple one. The second thing is, when I think about it, if we have other streets, and I think Kenyatta is a bigger issue, but I think if we have other streets and if these humps are temporary, they might be beneficial to be used in the community as a deterrent along with our flashing speed limit beacons to slow traffic down. So it's just an alternative. I'm not saying that we're gonna put them on every street and that we need 100 of them, but I would imagine on a street the size of Drown, that you're gonna need at least 3, if not 4. So pricing them out would be beneficial to the community.
Now, these, those kind of rubber.
Yeah, so they're
you stake 'em-
temporary.
You
Yep.
stake them in and you
Yep.
pull them out, yeah, okay.
I would,
So-
that's fine with me, yeah.
Okay.
Do you want that coming back as discussion, or you just want staff to get the information and bring
Yeah,
it
why
back
don't
to
you just send the
council?
information
Yeah,
to
just
the
information.
council, and then we
Yeah.
can decide whether to put it on the agenda, okay?
Yeah.
And I have a future agenda.
Okay, Ryan?
Steve, you were copied on it, the Children's Memorial issue on the property. I think that's being handled, but I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
it's being
Yes.
addressed and whatever confusion or whatever's going on.
Yes,
that
we're
needs
working-
to be agendized. Okay. And then 2 is based on the fatality at Maricopa Highway, and especially where that location was, because I had heard anecdotally that it was at the intersection at the Y, but it was not.
I heard
at
it
the-
was at the intersection
Yeah,
at
with the-
Miners Oaks, but it was not. It
Yeah,
was right in
so
the middle.
I'm
yeah.
trusting, I think that Renee, I think Renee probably knows better.
Well, there are flowers out there. You want to go see where.
I haven't seen-
where
Okay,
it
so,
happened.
and was it in front of it was the crosswalk in front of the hospital going over to what would be, I believe, La Paz or Valley Rio?
I will.
Yeah.
Yes.
I lived on, I feel like I've been talking about where I've lived for the last couple of meetings, but I used to live in Stewart Court, which was on the other side, right? And that was back there and kind of like real. That, unlike, like Randy and I don't necessarily think the intersection, I don't believe the one at Signal and Grand is anywhere near the priority of ensuring safe crossing over there. Not only is it near a school, it's actually 5 lanes wide, kind of, because there's a center lane. And I can tell you that I've driven in pure daylight and almost hit people on that road because they tend to blend in. And on that road, I almost got killed so many times. Now we have a situation where something's happened. It's acutely in our face. I think now is the time. I'd like to see on the agenda that we can do, or at least explore some options for what we can do at that crosswalk to just do anything to make it safer.
May I bring up a point just on that? Didn't we get a grant for doing a trial setting up of the traffic calming?
Yes, we
That we
did.
could use to accomplish this end quickly?
Well, let me answer a couple questions here. Yes, we did get the grant through SCAG, and I'll have to check with Mr. Grant on what the schedule is for that, but yes, that's in the works.
Couldn't we use that to get this done quickly as part of and kill 2 birds with 1 stone? In terms of traffic calming and looking at the design.
Yeah, I know.
Well, yeah, and then the other thing that's going on is, we are in the process of putting in the rapid reflecting beacons, and that one is scheduled, and I believe that one's scheduled, I was speaking to Mr. Grant about that today, and that one is the next one coming. So unfortunately, we're waiting, through Caltrans as we try to get these done as fast as possible. So that is also coming as well to be installed at that intersection as well, so.
Now, is that like the thing at the library?
That, correct. Those are the flashing beacon lights, which again, doesn't eliminate all the issues, but it's one more thing to perhaps improve the safety of what we all agree is a.
You know what time this accident occurred? Sergeant?
Yeah,
Evening.
5:50.
5, so not quite dusk?
It was daylight.
Yeah, pretty.
Still daylight.
Because dusk is always when it's really bad,
Right.
but that wasn't necessarily.
Yeah, the
dusk.
sun is.
But when are we gonna be able to implement that trial grant?
I'll find that
But
out.
also
Yeah,
be calming traffic down just doing that.
off the top of my head, I can't recall when we're expected to get that and implement that. The other thing that I will mention is that council had asked that you get a report on whenever we have a traffic-related fatality in the city. Sheriff's Department is working on that report, so it'll probably be about a month until that investigation is done, and so we'll share that
Well,
information.
and I'll make this point though. I don't, if that grant, and I appreciate trying to be efficient with it, I think that would be helpful. But I don't want to wait if it's going to take too long, and if there's any red tape about using that money for that crosswalk.
Right.
You said there's some already allocated, but whatever it's going to take to expedite that, I know it's a Caltrans situation.
No, I'd like to see
too.
the project go ahead.
But especially after that, it'd be nice to see us being responsive to what I think was an ongoing problem, and now this.
Sure, I'm not sure what the availability is on that, I'll find out.
The question is, if we're putting these beaconed crosswalks in right now, along with the discussion on the ATP.
Right.
So what I'm hearing is these crosswalks are still gonna be apart. Even if we go to one lane on each side and bike paths on each side, we're still gonna have crosswalks curb to curb.
Right, but it would be reduced down to 2 lanes.
And some of them,
with-
I think,
No,
are
but what I'm just trying to say is, we're still gonna be curb to curb with a crosswalk of some form of element, because
True.
someone stepping off a curb next to someone riding a bike is no different
Exactly.
than someone stepping off a curb and being hit by a car.
It is different. The chances of death by being hit by a bicycle are far lower than a car.
There's a chance on both. I'm just trying to say is
But
curb to
that's
curb,
that's
we still
that's a
need to
fact.
protect all people walking.
I agree.
Okay.
But there's a huge difference between hit by,
Yeah,
you know.
Okay.
the idea
So
is to
that's
make
on-
it safer. There's always an element of risk.
So I'm just trying to say is if we're doing that, and it seems to me, one of the questions that Ryan asked on this, the signal curve was what would it cost to put some type of a lighted crosswalk in there?
Yeah.
It was $30,000. So what are one of these run? 60,000, 100,000?
Okay, it's a good question, but we're wandering into
Right.
things that are not on the agenda. All we were asking right at this stage was future agenda items, so.
Hang on.
Just a second, Ryan, are you done? I'm done. Okay, okay.
Well, I just want to say, I consider the health and safety of the community is our first responsibility. We were warned months ago, we've been warned that somebody was going to get killed there. I feel that we failed by not acting, because we knew that this could happen.
Okay, Susan, we're talking about future agenda items.
So,
Please,
so
yeah,
for the
please, to the
future
point, but-
agenda item, I was going to bring up what Ryan brought up very well. I consider that we come up with some immediate plan. Not, if it's, what did you say?
We need
that
to
we don't-
reprioritize it high, whatever
we
that's gonna
make it a high priority, and there has to be something that we can put up there, even if it's temporary, cones or whatever.
It's the state of
you know.
California, and we can make suggestions, and that's all great, but what are we gonna put on the agenda? We gotta be a little more specific, or we can take this up later. So you have something you want on the agenda?
I want on the agenda what we can do to make that crosswalk safer as soon as possible. There are other cities dealing with this. There are all kinds of things that people, you can paint the crosswalk. You can do it
It just got painted.
Okay, yeah, right, okay, we're going back into discussing and evaluating. Okay, you raised the question, if there's something that we can find out from Caltrans how they're responding to it. I know the sheriff's office and the highway patrol generally, when they have a fatality, have a report and comments as to what might have contributed to the situation and how it could be corrected. Bill?
Yeah, I want to raise another entirely different issue. We have a new planning commission structure ordinance going into effect on April 25th. We have had another planning commission meeting canceled because of a last-minute decision by a planning commissioner not to attend. I would like to put on the next available meeting, if we have time, the next meeting, for commissioner membership as an agenda item. And we may want to, I would like the opportunity to make have a discussion of taking a measure, taking a step towards getting the planning commission down to 5 immediately, right after the ordinance goes into effect, especially in the light of a fact of excessive absences of at least one of the planning commission members. It's our decision, and right now, if we don't take action, we'll have a 6-person commission with a 3-person quorum, and I think we ought to at least raise the issue and agendize it and discuss whether we want to get down to 5 immediately.
Well, could that include investigating why I was there?
It would be on the agenda.
Why the 2 were absent? I thought it was a conference, but I could
It
be
wasn't
wrong.
those 2. But I'm just saying I want to put it on the agenda so we can take action if we think it's appropriate.
Okay, how about you and I getting together and figure out how best that can be handled? Sounds like kind of a quasi-personnel activity that we're engaged in, and we've got these vague rules as to how people go on to commissions and come off of commissions, and maybe we can come up with a report back with a recommendation.
Well, and I think we could agendize that, yes.
We actually have a set of rules.
They serve at will
Right.
with council. Each commissioner member serves at will.
City attorney looks like he's,
Yeah, the council has the power to remove any of the commissioners. The council as a whole can remove them with a vote of 3, or the mayor can recommend removal subject to the confirmation of the council, or, as sometimes happens successfully in this situation, a request can be made by 2 members of council that so-and-so might consider resigning, and then they might leave, depending on, of course, the underlying politics. So there's kind of 3 paths there.
you and me?
Sure.
Okay. And then we'll decide whether it needs to come
Be
back
on the agenda or not
but
after we
yeah,
talk
we do
about
need
it.
to address it. It's sort of ridiculous that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, especially we have applicants talking about how long delays are with community development
Right.
stuff. If you're adding planning to that, it's
And they add in
ridiculous.
people saying they're going to be at a meeting and the last minute saying they're not going to be, yeah.
What was it last?
But there was sort of a strange set of circumstances you may be aware of. I'll talk to you about it, but I think that the whole point is that we should have a method by which, these terms should not last forever, and people need to rotate out occasionally. There's a lot of things that.
Sounds like we need to agendize this.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, okay, we got it, okay. Mr. City Manager, do you have anything?
I hope you watch what transpired at that meeting.
The meeting
There
didn't
were-
happen.
They canceled it.
No, what preceded.
It wasn't-
There was a discussion.
I-
The reason they canceled,
We're not gonna debate it tonight.
Not deliberating.
But I understand what you, probably
they
where you're
had
going
good
with it.
reason for doing what they did, in my opinion.
Okay, we're not talking,
Yeah, I think there is an explanation, but Bill and I will look into that and come back with a recommendation to the council. Steve?
Thank you. City Manager's report. Again, everybody knows we've got the Localizing California Waters coming up conference next week. I'm going to try to attend some of that on Monday and Tuesday. I know several of you are also signed up as well. Of course, that's at the Ojai Valley Inn. We talked already about the traffic fatality. We'll get you some further information on that and also come back with the options as discussed for what we might be able to do in terms of pedestrian safety there. You're also want to report on behalf of the Cannabis Subcommittee or Cannabis Committee. We're just about, I think, wrapped up that work. We're working on putting together the staff report and making sure that that accurately reflects everything that the committee is recommending. Question that I would like to pose to the council, since we think that this is probably going to be a fairly lengthy discussion with a lot of detail and probably a fair number of public speakers. Is this something that council would want to consider actually doing as a special meeting, aside from a regular meeting night? Might be a lot to try and put in terms of, in terms of a regular agenda with other items. So I wanted to put that out there. Just again, I don't need an answer tonight, but see if the council sees any value in perhaps calling a special meeting just to handle that issue of the recommendation coming back from the Cannabis Committee.
it's hard for me to have an opinion about that until I really know the scale of the proposal.
Understood. Yeah, I guess.
Whatever you think it is, it's bigger.
Guess what we're saying, we
Your
think
answer.
it's probably gonna, probably be a multi-hour discussion between.
What did you guys do?
Well,
We
we
sent them
expect
back
we'll get a
for-
lot of
for
speakers
Just
too.
a little clarity on something.
Would you think we were back there just eating breakfast?
I thought maybe you were, I don't want to go back to what you were gonna do. But I just had a question though, this might throw a monkey in or a wrench into your plans here. We are talking about a smoking ordinance right now. And so I'm sure hoping that, we don't pass something cannabis-wise and then our new smoking ordinances that might come into effect is gonna impact secondhand cannabis smoke or third-hand cannabis smoke. So I just want to make sure that that's part of the discussion that you guys
Well,
enter into.
this is, our discussion is on cannabis manufacturing. And I'm well aware that I don't see how our smoking ordinance could not impact smoking cannabis. It's gonna.
Better to our cannabis users.
My preference, I'll just express, would be that we have it as a regular meeting, and if it blows up that meeting, that we always can then
Okay.
have a special meeting. That's
All
my
right.
personal preference.
I will say this.
I would-
I will say this.
Yeah.
Regardless of how much public input we have, the scope of the situation is incredibly complicated and is going to require a significant time of explanation and a significant time of discussion, minus any public input. We need that too, but that's just, and
I-
I think
I
Steve
highly-
appreciates where I am on that.
I recommend a special meeting if we can coordinate the time.
But I would always prefer it not to be a special meeting, but I think it would be a really bogged down meeting, unfortunately. But I don't know, and I don't know how many people from the public are gonna speak. I know we're gonna get a few, but.
Okay, well, sounds like we'll try to schedule that then for a regular meeting then, and unless we have a change of heart, okay.
Yeah, that's.
And then I also want to report that the city has completed its work in terms of the infestation of the home on Gregory Street. So that work has been completed, and just want to give you a report on that, so.
And we assess the property owner?
We're in the, yes, we're assessing the property and working to get that collected. And then the other thing that I wanted to share, and I bring this up somewhat humorously, but also I didn't want to ever be considered about being remiss. So I just want to let you know that we were contacted by a representative from AT&T, who wanted to know if the city had any interest in putting a cell tower in Libby Park or any other park facility. They'd be willing to pay us a substantial lease, so.
On the pickleball court?
I told them that the city was not interested, but I did want to at least make the council aware that we did get the inquiry, and I did say that, did not see that that this would be something that the council would be interested in. But I did want to let you know that we did get the inquiry, and we did tell them that we were not interested.
Appreciate your sharing that with us.
Yes, thank you.
I can't imagine that hearing.
I didn't want to come forward to ask for that as a future agenda item.
5G or whatever it is, and
I know there were.
surely they wouldn't have the courage for a tower when.
They have a dead spot in the middle of the city. They're actively trying to find a property owner that would allow them to place an antenna, so.
There is a 5G dead spot in the center of the city.
When you say a
Right near
dead
my
spot,
office.
do you mean
That's-
there's a spot in the city limit where people don't get reception?
No, it's the 5G is if you have
bandwidth thing.
Yeah, they're spaced out much shorter than
Yeah,
the
yeah,
old stuff, so
yeah.
it's a lot harder to get coverage
But
for all.
why is it called a dead spot?
Because there's no coverage in that
It-
area.
it-
But
it's-
it's a type of the data. It's not for the phone. But
Oh, okay,
not gonna
it's
get
a
it.
dead spot.
No one died.
Okay, but it's not a dead spot for normal service? Okay.
Not for
okay.
phone calls.
For phone.
And it's not a
Okay.
dead spot for 4G service. It's just a dead spot for 5G
Okay.
data service.
All right, no, we don't want to.
That's all I had,
That's
thank
it?
you.
All right, okay.
Wait, him.
Oh, I
the rodeo.
Real quick shout out.
Okay.
Saturday, the 27th, we have three really exciting events coming up. First of all, there's a bike rodeo for the kids, for your granddaughter. Come over there. They're going to give away 20 bicycles. We're going to have helmets given away. I think we have 85 helmets. We're setting up a little course the kids get to go through, how fast they go through, safely and fast they go through the course. They can win the prizes, so that's exciting. That's at Nordhoff, starting at 10 a.m. on Saturday. Also at Nordhoff, at 9 a.m. is our Shred Day by the Ojai Explorers. That's where, after taxes, we all want to shred our documents. So last year, very, very successful. There was a line of cars to drop off their shred, so we have a shred company there, and our explorers take it out of your car, shred it for you. And also that day at Nordhoff, it's National DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, Drug Take-Back Day, where you can also get rid of your prescription.
Illegal.
No, not your illegal drugs. Well, we'd probably take those from you as well. But your prescription drugs to be discarded properly so they don't harm the environment or left in the home. And that's also a big successful thing that's put on nationally, and Ojai has a representation. Ojai Police Department has a representation. So that's so 3 things you can come and do, all in one location. All of those are between 9 and 2. So
I have a question. Do you take veterinary drugs, like
they'll take
animal
those
drugs?
as well. Yes.
Oh, good.
The only
Yeah.
thing we don't take is actual needles.
Mhm.
Do not take any syringes. No, no
All
needle
right,
exchange.
I can bring my.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sergeant.
Thank you.
And you'll have to find another location for your needle exchange. Okay, we're done. Thank you.